Eternal God, we come before you tonight. We're humbled by the magnitude of responsibility that you have given to us. We ask that you bless these proceedings here tonight, and may all things accomplished here be done according to your will and to your pleasure. We ask that you help us to stay within the acceptable boundaries of all mankind, and everything accomplished here tonight be done decent and in order. These and all other blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Face the flag, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Parrish.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Blanco.
Here.
Councilman Bovair.
Here.
Councilwoman Warner.
Here.
Councilman Whipple.
Here.
City Attorney Garganese. Here. City Manager Takanich.
Here.
Assistant City Manager Fuhrer.
Here.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, you get any changes, John?
No, sir.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda in minutes as follows. The regular meeting of October 10th, 2018, the budget CIP workshop on August 8th, 2018, the special council meeting on September 5th, 2018, the regular city council meeting of September 11th, 2018, and the special city council meeting of September 13th, 2018.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Wow, Don, good job. All right. Jerry?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Brenda, can you see? Okay.
I'll stand up.
Good evening. I'm going to be reading a proclamation tonight. City of Cocoa, Florida proclamation. Whereas Rotary clubs bring dedicated individuals together to exchange ideas, build relationships, and take actions. And whereas the object of Rotary is to encourage and foster the ideal of service as a basis of worthy enterprise, and in particular, to encourage and foster. And whereas Cocoa Rotary is made up of 3 parts. At the heart of Rotary are their clubs that are supported by Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. And whereas the Cocoa Rotary helps the community in many different ways, such as Josh the Otter, teaching water safety to children, and their continued support of the Boys and Girls Club, the Central Boulevard Sharing Center, and several other organizations. And whereas the Cocoa Rotary follows the basic ABCs, which is to always service above self, be a part of serving the community and world, and come and learn from local community leaders each week. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Cocoa, Florida, I do hereby recognize the Cocoa Rotary for their continued involvement and support of the Cocoa community. If members of Cocoa Rotary would like to come up at this time, we could have you say a few words. Yes, go right ahead. Thank you.
I'll just take a minute. A lot of our accomplishments have already been announced, but our history is from 1924 in the city of Cocoa. We have had parades, Mardi Gras fun, our signature party in the park event, which I would hope a lot of you have already been to, and we hope to have a good, successful relationship with that in the future with the city of Cocoa. The Boys and Girls Club building was donated from behalf of one of our members to the Boys and Girls Club. There's no other one in Brevard County, but I believe they're getting one in Titusville now, Erin? Is that? So there's going to be one in Titusville. Huge, wonderful event. So that's basically it. If anybody would like to join, let us know. We're always looking for new members. And thank you again for this proclamation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do. And thank you to Cocoa Rotary, a wonderful organization.
I was like. Give him the wave.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Okay. Our next agenda item, this is in recognition of Mr. Shom Diefendorfer for the generous donation of trees around the Diamond Square Regional Stormwater Treatment Facility. Just to give you some background, after observing there were no trees around the recently completed Diamond Square Regional Stormwater Treatment Facility, Mr. Shom Diefendorfer, a resident of the city of Cocoa, approached staff about the lack of trees around the Diamond Square Regional Stormwater Facility. Mr. Diefendorfer spoke with Public Works Director Ed Weigriff and learned planting of the trees was not included as part of the project due to budget constraints. However, irrigation lines and system components were installed for future plantings. Mr. Diefendorfer generously purchased and donated 6 pine, 6 cypress, and 6 live oak trees. Public Works crews planted the donated trees and installed heads on the irrigation system. In light of his generosity and contribution to the community, and specifically the enhancements to the Diamond Square Regional Stormwater Facility, Deputy Mayor Blanco, myself, requested Mr. Diefendorfer be recognized for his contribution to the city. The city is presenting Mr. Diefendorfer with this plaque. Unfortunately, he is unable to be with us here tonight, so I am accepting this plaque on his behalf. Thank you.
Yep. Sure, thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Finance Director.
Yeah. One thing I want to say is on Cocoa Rotary, I guess it was formed in Cocoa, 1926 is what Mike told me. But that's a long time ago, so a lot of years. Oh, okay, yeah. Finance, what do you got?
I would like to invite Ann Casada and Laura Howe. Ann is the accounting manager and Laura is the deputy finance director. The fiscal year 2017 comprehensive annual financial report for the city of Cocoa is qualified for the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by the City of Cocoa and its management. The CAFR has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate the financial story. The certificate is awarded to the city, which is this one, and the award of financial reporting achievement is presented to the department that is primarily responsible for having earned the certificate. I would like to congratulate staff for having satisfied the high standards of the program and earning the award for the city for the fiscal year 2017 CAFR. Congratulations.
This is why we're here. This is finance.
Finance.
We're going to do this.
Nothing works without financing, does it? You don't get a check without them either, Anthony, so you should go down. Alabama's not doing.
Hey, John, just while we have the audience, what's our Moody's rating? Sorry about that.
Double A plus, and then for the utility system, it was a double A positive, which was an upgrade.
So you could say Coco's never been in this position financially, as far as secure.
Thanks.
That's the second year in a row after 17 years
Yeah.
for the city not being recognized for the excellence of financial reporting.
But financially,
That's quite an achievement.
it's a big achievement,
Yeah.
so. All right, so,
Finance staff does an excellent job in
yeah,
all that they do.
Good job, sir.
yeah, thank you, everybody. That CAFR,
Yeah.
good stuff. All right. So, we're going to go to delegations. We're going to start with Matt Phillips. Everything's preloaded up here. Matt, how you doing? Very well. Good, thank you.
Thank you. Bovair. It's a tough one.
I think your mic's on.
Over here.
I think your mic's on.
Thank you.
My name is Matthew Phillips. I am the owner and president of Go Port Canaveral. We're a destination management company.
You want to pull a mic in front of you?
Yeah, pull the mic a little closer. Sorry. Name again.
No worries. My name is Matt Phillips, and I am president and owner of Florida Cruise Ports here in Merritt Island, Florida. And we have a proposal for the old Home Depot property, which I know this was proposed once before. So I'll just read what our proposal is and then be happy to take any questions. The back lot of the old Home Depot property located at 220 Highway 524 remains vacant at this time, and the property owner believes it may take 3 to 3.5 years until new tenants are secured. In the meantime, we bring you a mutually beneficial agreement for the use of the property. As cruise transportation providers, we'd like to fence in the back of the property to utilize it for our Port Canaveral cruisers' vehicle storage. Through traditional parking lots charge their consumers per day for parking, we operate differently. Instead of charging a typical per pay day fee, we offer complimentary parking with the purchase of round-trip cruise transfers. We do not charge customers for the storage of their vehicles. We charge only for the transportation to and from the cruise port. In addition to adding fencing, we would have the space lit and video monitored as well to provide utmost safety. Our traffic impact on the surrounding area is small, as we store a small amount of vehicles and operate a limited amount of hours, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. on cruise days only. We would agree to use the property only until the owner leases the space, and again, in which case we would vacate the property within 6 months. The benefits. We'd love to bring the economical benefits that Port Canaveral and Cocoa Beach experience daily because of the cruise industry to Cocoa. On average, our lot would bring in 150 to 200 cars per cruise day. These cruisers typically spend an average of $20 to $40 per person on gas, merchandise, and food while in the area. Altogether, this would equate to approximately $8,000 per cruise day, $24,000 per week, and $1.25 million annually in revenue for the local Cocoa area businesses. Some of these businesses include McDonald's, Cocoa, Commons, Publix, Sunoco, gas station, Walmart, Taco Bell, Dollar Tree, Aldi's, and many more. Florida Cruise Ports is the largest destination management company in Florida for pre- and post-cruise travel services. We specialize in online booking services marketed to cruise travelers that include hotel, transportation, and parking packages designed to complement their cruise. If you look on the second page, you will have a map of the property. You see where the red lines are. This is where we've already gone to get fencing estimated. So it would literally block off, and just using the back half. There would be no view of cars from the highway. There would be no view from cars from the parking lot. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah,
Matt,
Mr. Mayor, I want
Yes,
to
sir.
advise council not to comment on this. This item should go through Community Services. There was an application, I forget if it was a special exception or a variance, and it goes through, would have to secure Board of Adjustment approval, and this council, that if the application could be brought before this council in a quasi-judicial manner, so I'm going to advise council not to discuss the matter. You can meet with Karen Hamilton on making an application, but you're correct. It was about 3 years ago, there was an application related to a very similar operation.
Yeah.
That's in reference to the sunshine law.
No, it's,
No.
Bottom line, see Karen, fill out the application,
Yes,
and
yes,
then come
yes.
back. I got
no,
it.
you'll go to the Board of
Thanks for
Adjustment.
coming.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Laura Houston? Laura, just remind you, 3 minutes is what we're doing tonight.
Okay, 3 minutes. Hi, guys. How's everybody doing? Great.
Good.
Okay, my name is Laura Houston, 109 North 5th, Cocoa. And I just want to let everybody know that I am a candidate for Cocoa seat 1, but I'm not here politicking. While I was at a union meeting, Union 630, I talked to some of the employees, and they was under contract negotiation, and they mentioned that some of the employees, the city employees, are having difficulties financially. And during the course of the conversation, we talked about the minimum wage being, for the city of Cocoa, $15 an hour. So I think it's a great idea, and I told them I would address the council and possibly see what we can, where we can go with that. So what I would like to do is propose to the council that they do a feasibility study to increase the minimum wage of all city employees, full-time, part-time, and temporary, to $15 an hour. Now, I realize that the skill sets are totally different and there's other complications, but the mood of the nation is to go towards $15 an hour. And in 2020, I believe it's going to be on the ballot and it's going to pass. So I think the city of Cocoa should take the leadership role in this issue and consider increasing the minimum wage in city employees to $15 an hour, okay? So do I have any questions?
Any questions, anybody?
No, ma'am.
I just
Thank you.
want to remind council that all of the current union contracts were just negotiated and ratified, and the city's current minimum wage, or the lowest wage is $10.10, and that was done 3 years ago when there was federal discussions about the possibility of increasing the federal minimum wage, and we did that at that point in time.
Okay. Laura, thank you.
John.
And every employee received their 3% adjustment plus an equity adjustment, pursuant to their collective bargaining unit contracts.
Okay, well, I just want to comment, the last comment, I'm really going to push this issue because I think the city of Cocoa wage minimum wage should be $15 an hour, like I stated, okay?
Yeah.
And thank you.
Thank you. Right. Judy McClooney?
I think it's on the redevelopment plan.
Oh.
She's on the CRA plan. Yeah.
Oh, okay, the CRA. Yeah, I just saw that.
Yes.
That's fine, Judy. Sorry about that. And Rip Dial?
You got 10 seconds?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, City Council.
Don't forget, you gotta give your address.
3807 Parapet Drive, Cocoa, Florida. I've been working with the Canine Competition for Community First, which is a Bavard Kennel Club, Cocoa Police Department function. It's going to be October 13th, this Saturday, from 1 to 7. I've had some volunteers to help me put all the obstacles together. We're going to have, Cocoa High is going to provide with their food vendors, and it's $3 to parking, and you get in for free. We've got 23 canine teams at this time, and it's going to be split up in 2 different parts. You're going to have the obstacle, then you're going to have the chase and bite. At halftime, there's going to be a little demonstration of some other things that canines do that are not police dogs. It's going to be community dogs. I'd like to thank everybody. Brevard Kennel Club is the main sponsor. We have Banjbach Easy Lifts. We have Diamondback Firearms, Florida Bullet, Real Living, which is Mutter Realty, Pet Pros, a lot of sponsors. Southern Tape and,
Label.
yeah, thank you. All Auto Salvage, Space Coast Kennel Club, Vieira Voiced, Atlantic Culvert, and last but least, Tales of the Barkery. I also like to thank some individuals that came out and helped me build this. I've been doing this for 3.5, 4 weeks. I got to start out with the PAL kids came out Saturday. I expected to have 4 or 5 hours worth of work. They came out there, they're professional. I had 10 kids. I'd like to name them, but I got to figure legal for the mic in there. I don't know if I should do that or not. So I just like to thank the PAL kids. They were wonderful. In 2 hours, it was done. And I've also had Jake Williams. He came out and helped. My friend Jimmy Watts. I had Joe Champion. I had Larry Sinclair, but special thanks has to go to Alex Goings. He has been over backwards and helped me all the way through this. And he's going to be out there with his trucks and his portable forklift to get the projects from this fire department out to the Cocoa High Stadium where the event's going to be at. And I also like to thank the chief, both chiefs, fire department and chief of police for supporting me and letting me do all that stuff in your fire department. I will get the little drops of paint off the floor as soon as this is all over. But I hope you all come out and see. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Thank you, Rip.
Thank you.
Rip,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Very good.
It's been a lot of work. A lot of hot, sweaty days.
All right. So we'll go to consent.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Very good. All right, finance?
Oh,
Oh, no, I'm wrong.
Edmonds.
Tammy, sorry.
Yeah, I think Anthony will read it in, right?
Marked up my book too much here. Sorry. Okay.
I think the attorney's gonna read that
Anthony?
item, right?
Super attorney?
With the double-sided copies. Hold on one
Did
second.
New England win this week?
They won on Thursday.
Number 09.
Well, I'm looking for this. I'll do a plug for the Red Sox, though.
Oh, here we go.
Right, John? Okay, the first public hearing item is ordinance number 09-2018, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cocoa, Brevard County, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 8, Firefighters Retirement Plan of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Cocoa by amending Section 2-321, Retirement Dates, amending Section 2-32, Share Plan, providing for codification, providing for severability of provisions, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date. This is second and final reading of this ordinance. There haven't been any changes since first reading, and a public hearing item. Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to close it to council, bring it to the public. Anybody want to speak on this ordinance? Sure. Okay, we'll close it to the public, bring it back to council. How we want to, what kind of action here?
Motion approved.
Okay, got one.
Second.
Second over here. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Very good.
Okay.
Thanks, Super Attorney.
Next item is, I'll read in the ordinance by title. Ordinance number 10-2018, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cocoa, Brevard County, Florida, amending sections 8-21 and 8-22 of the City Code to adopt an updated redevelopment plan for the Cocoa Community Development Agency, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance. This ordinance, as the title indicates, would adopt as Exhibit A new redevelopment plan for the Cocoa Redevelopment Agency, and also make several technical amendments to the city code to incorporate the updated redevelopment plan. And Mr. Tikanich will give you all the details of
I have a card.
the updates.
Do you want a card to go?
Yeah, it's a
After
public
I get
hearing.
the after I get the presentation,
Okay.
during the
All right.
presentation, there's opportunity for
Okay.
public hearing.
All right.
Just by way of background, in terms of the Cocoa Community Redevelopment Agency, it was established when the city, back in July of 1980, made a determination regarding the necessity for redevelopment of blighted areas. And then in 1981, they adopted findings of necessity by resolution, and then also adopted an ordinance creating the Cocoa Community Redevelopment Agency. And that's pursuant to the Community Redevelopment Act of the Florida statutes. The power to modify the redevelopment plan, it's rooted in the statutes, specifically 163.361. And then in 2018, which you have before you, in your agenda item, you have several things. You have the CRA plan update. You obviously have the staff report. You have the P&Z staff report. You also have the copy of the letter to the Board of County Commission notifying them, and as well as the legal advertisement, the publication from Florida Today. So the last time the plan was updated it was 21 years ago. It was in 1997. A plan update by statute is only good for 30 years. In 2008, it started before the Great Recession hit, but it ultimately was adopted or approved. We went through about a year or so process of very intensive community stakeholder meetings, subcommittees. Matter of fact, I saw Jack Masson here. I don't know if he's still here. He was one of the people that really got involved in that process in 2008. It was facilitated. The CRA hired a firm, Gliding Jackson Kershaw Anglin, subsequently known as AECOM, to do the plan. The plan was never amended or updated because the waterfront master plan, which it said it was a waterfront master plan, it covered the entire redevelopment area. The plan was not amended because the projects at the time were all found to be consistent with the 1997 Community Redevelopment Plan. So fast forward, 2017, we have Hurricane Irma, which devastates the waterfront. For the area near the waterfront, there were specific projects and ideas that were considered. And so post-Hurricane Irma, the CRA retained GAI consultants, community solution groups. The lead principal, Pete Seckler, happened to be the lead principal with AECOM, or Gliding Jackson Kershaw Anglin back then. And so in April, the Cocoa CRA approved the waterfront master plan update, which contemplated more than the original waterfront master plan. Okay. So again, I might have just said it, but essentially a redevelopment plan, it should be evaluated, updated generally every 5 to 10 years. Actually, the city comprehensive plan, policy 1149, says on a continuing basis, the city shall review and update as necessary the redevelopment area plans. I already mentioned that the statute provides for 30 years. Thus, the 1997 Cocoa CRA Community Redevelopment Plan will expire in fiscal year 2027. And I think it's important to note, because I know there's been discussion about CRAs within this county, and in 1994, the county became a charter county, but this CRA was created prior to the charter, so therefore it still abides by the laws and is related to modifications, existence, time period that are in the statute. So modifying and adopting the new community redevelopment plan would extend the life to the full statutory, what was contemplated back when the act was adopted, for 60 years. The recognition that, when things fall into a state of deterioration and blight, it doesn't take 10, 20 years. It takes many times longer than that, much longer than that, to reverse that and keep it put on a stable course. This would extend the agency to April of 2041 and would enable the COCO CRA to undertake the redevelopment projects, activities, and programs contained in the plan. What's in the plan, what was changed, there were the background, the history, the data was updated, the existing conditions, they were reanalyzed, you know, and the current conditions were provided, maps were revised as appropriate, and then it incorporated the frameworks for proposed improvements that were originally established in the 2008 Waterfront Master Plan. In the 1997 plan, there was like 5 districts, and then in the 2008, there was made a determination, well, there was many more than just the 5 districts, you know, because it's a very diverse, you know, area in terms of land use, function, and character. The community goals, policies, objectives, and plan strategies were revised as appropriate. And then the crux of a redevelopment plan, you know, because the idea is you're leveraging the TIF, or the tax increment financing revenues, that the taxing authorities are foregoing to help fund the CRA, is you're leveraging that to, you know, both with the private sector or in terms of doing public capital projects. So this plan reflects the projects, ones that were in the 1997 plan that may not have, you know, risen to the level of being completed yet. Those in the 2008 plan, keep in mind, after it was adopted, the Great Recession, and it was about 2013 before we start seeing an increase in incremental, or the tax increment values, or the property values, which thus increase the tax increment revenues. And then we incorporated the 2018 Waterfront Master Plan, the update specifically that was more narrowly focused. While it took the Waterfront Master Plan, you know, as a foundation, it kind of narrowed in on the waterfront, that area specifically because of the devastation of Hurricane Irma. So one of the things that is required pursuant to the Florida statutes is that the community redevelopment plan must conform to the comprehensive plan for the municipality. We did, you know, prior to the COCO CRA considering the update to its community redevelopment plan, the city's land planning agency, or the Planning and Zoning Board, they reviewed the plan for conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. That occurred on September 18th. It was a special meeting, it was advertised. The COCO CRA community redevelopment plan was evaluated for consistencies with the city's comprehensive plan. Specific elements within the comprehensive plan included future land use, transportation, solid waste, housing, stormwater management, coastal management, recreation, open space. And then a big, again, I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of capital projects, you know, as you look at the plan. And so they looked at those projects as well because they needed to be consistent as well. Waterfront improvements and enhancements. Lee Winter Park, the new plan recognizes that the city acquired Lee Winter Park, you know, right before and after, kind of like in the middle of Hurricane Irma. And it eliminated projects that were inconsistent and that were originally planned. Specifically, the 1997 plan, it called for the development of an inn and restaurant, more intensive commercial uses out at the Lee Winter Park. And in the acquisition and, you know, through the interlocal agreement with the county, the introduction of commercial uses are narrowly limited to, you know, to institutional and/or supporting commercial that would support the recreational components and the boating, you know, within Lee Winter Park. It also calls for the relocation of the Civic Center, you know, in terms of building one out there at the point. It also looks at Riverfront Park and, you know, improvements that could be made to it, as well as along, you know, enhancing what will be rebuilt as a result of the hurricane damage. And then it included projects, you know, related to parking, infill housing, to specifically including workforce and affordable housing. It identified new, you know, specific sub-districts, if you will. And then it also looked at catalytic mixed-use development sites. What are the prime ones that exist that could be catalytic in nature and, you know, set the CRA on a more stable path, and also, you know, continue to inject the vibrancy and the life and within the Cocoa Village and within the redevelopment area, within the heart of Cocoa, within north of, what some of us call the north downtown, or just north of the village. And it talked about wayfinding, gateways, and signage, certainly an issue that was discussed earlier this evening at the Cocoa Community Redevelopment Agency. And then it looked at streets in general. The Planning and Zoning Board, their role was to consider whether the draft amended redevelopment plan was consistent with the comp plan. On September 10th, the Planning and Zoning Board found the 2018 Community Redevelopment Plan as amended consistent with the city's 2010-2020 comprehensive plan. So there's the red area outlines the redevelopment area for the Cocoa, the boundaries for the Cocoa Redevelopment Agency, and that was what you're looking at in the middle, or to the left, is the cover for the 2008 Waterfront Master Plan, and you can see it's not limited to just the waterfront. It actually covers the whole area, and that image there is contained within the plan, and that image conveys what the stakeholders, the residents, the business owners, and all those that participated, that was the vision that they aspired that the redevelopment plan could, accomplish. The mooring field, some additional improvements to the waterfronts, the T-dock. One of the projects was discussed is completed, the riverfront connector. Okay, I forgot I had that slide. So you can see, everybody can see it in a much larger scale, so it looks, you can see at that point in time. So, obviously, I mentioned the Great Recession. What has happened, even though that Great Recession occurred, is one, the US 1 streetscape improvements within the Cocoa CRA area were accomplished as FDOT found it necessary to widen the road to 3 lanes. The new City Hall was developed. CRA did not participate in that project, but it was a former brownfield site, and now where you are, it's a LEED silver site. And actually, I think it's the only, government building in Brevard County that happens to be a LEED certified site. The Roselle Jones Park Square design, that dysfunctional, if some people call it a traffic circle, I call it a dysfunctional traffic triangle. And it was to reclaim that and make it more functioning, more safe for pedestrians, and also create public space. The plans were designed, at least brought to a point of 90%. The form-based code was created, creating the waterfront overlay and the development and design guidelines. Wayfinding, that program actually, in terms of some of the entry signs have been completed, but some of the more wayfinding signs have not, because obviously we know that things are right now in a state of, there's a lot of decisions happening with this plan, so the decision was, rather than go put signs up that says, go park here, well, if we'd have done it back then, they'd have been directing the City Hall down Brevard Avenue versus here, so. 520 improvements, it was the CRA that initiated the initial safety, or the study of the corridor for 520, that for the area of 520 that bisects the CRA, and took it to TPO. FDOT did a corridor study. As you know, we're working with both the county and unfortunately, one of our biggest champions and advocates with FDOT was Senator Huckel, but we'll certainly look forward to working with our new representative and state senator. Florida Avenue streetscape, that was completed. Some people said that you could not, make parking available on that street, or you could not get rid of that traffic light at the end. Most people don't even remember the traffic light at the end now.
That's right.
And actually, it's pretty innovative, some of the things that were done in terms of the paved drain, tying in as well, on the eastern edge. You could turn the water, the fire hydrant on. Actually, there was a test that did that, and all that water just started to dissipate. Just went right into that retention pond that was built just north of the AT&T, the infamous tower.
Ice house.
Yes. Lee Winter Park, we mentioned, was conveyed from the county to the city. The city acquired Oaks Mobile Home Park, which was a component of the Waterfront Master Plan in terms of the potential for the redevelopment of that site. The parking study has been updated. It was there was one done in 2007. Actually, I say it's updated, but we've come to find out the final draft, that's what we have, and we just have to, we're working to get the final, the data's correct, but in terms of the document, there's some formatting and some wordsmithing that needs to be done. The gateway signage elements, we mentioned that. You actually, the COCO Community Redevelopment Agency earlier this evening discussed a gateway signage feature. There was also a referendum that was passed by the citizens of COCO to preserve for public use in Scenic Vista the water's edge. The previous redevelopment plan called for like a marina going out in front of Riverfront Park with some potential for commercial development, and a referendum was the idea of the mayor to preserve that area, and the council's approval. It went to the voters, and they approved it. So that changed. And then we continue to do pre-development activities, in terms of environmental site assessment activities to try to, find those properties that might be environmentally constrained. Post-IRMA, again, build on the 08 plan, acknowledge the projects that were completed. I just went over those. Recognize some of the repair efforts. Some of them are underway, and I can tell you, I know Matt sits on the District 4 Advisory Board, and he's heard that there's some projects, they're not even going to be touched in terms of looking at engineering or anything like that for a year, let alone construction. And you are seeing the shoreline stabilization happen, the riverfront connector happen, the finger docks for the boat ramps, that's occurring, and other projects are underway. But those were ones that are consistent with the existing plan. There are projects that are incorporated into the new plan that the CRA cannot expend any funds on. You can't expend funds outside your area, redevelopment area, or on projects, capital or otherwise, that are not included in the plan. It provides for more broad community input. It provided for a broader and included community input. Looked at 10-year action plan. It established, you can find in there, I know somebody had mentioned to me, well, there's no priorities. Page 54 has the priorities in terms of high, medium, low, and establishes a time frame. And then the pull-out sections of your redevelopment plan, you'll see it establishes the priorities for each area and to include the timeline and the costs. So that does exist in there. It provided order of magnitude budgeting, and then it projected. We looked at and extrapolated based on construction cost increases. If this project wasn't to happen for 7 or 8 years, we extrapolated those costs or added to it so we would know realistically what was the cost of the plan. High level, effort, but it really came down to, at the Waterfront Master Plan meetings, update was, okay, IRMA was the eraser in terms of things that were identified in 2008, but at that time, everybody said, well, we can't just pull out the boardwalk. We have that beautiful boardwalk there, even though it's not ideal and it's not, the best. Well, Hurricane Irma did something that the 2008 plan wanted to do and thought about it, but it didn't get in there because of, it was built with grant dollars. So bringing the water, the boardwalk, building things in a more resilient fashion, bringing it on, the land side, the bulkhead, having the opportunity to put some swings to create this, nice scenic view, from the Riverfront Park all the way without, if you look out, you get out there right now, about 10 feet away, all you see, it blocks you. It blocks you. Well, not right now, but previously when the boardwalk was up there. So, this is a snapshot of the Waterfront Master Plan update concept. Obviously, with, looking at the Civic Center, a smaller fishing, dock, since this, on the east of the is the old 520 road. That portion of the property, that bridge, was not conveyed to the city for good reason, because obviously the city did not want to inherit the liability if a storm was to come in and that was to just come tumbling down, because there are some significant issues. We actually did an engineering analysis of that back in 2008, and there was issues back then with the piles and some of the other things.
Rust.
So the Civic Center, the addition of additional parking, the preservation of the boat slips or for the trailers. I know my son and I were down there enjoying the new Riverfront Connector 2 weeks ago fishing, and it was active. I mean, it's a very active park. It's cleaned up. It's vastly different than from when we acquired it. Harbor Master Building, yes, sir, you have a question? No. A Harbor Master Building for the purposes of, as we expand the plan is the city, working with FEMA, will put back what existed, and then the CRA will provide enhancements. It does provide for the opportunity for a mooring field. There was even some islands out there that could be created to try to attenuate waves, the action of waves to protect the infrastructure. The question becomes, just like FDOT and every other agency or even private business, the cost of doing that, does it, if you're spending $6 or $9 million to protect $3 million, does it make it, so that is a long-term project to continue to be evaluated. Additional dinghy docks and the day slips, and then you get the boardwalk is going landside, but maintaining those 2 gazebos to provide that. It did look at reimagining, if you will, Taylor Park, a longer-term project. Harrison Street, I think it's a medium-term project. And then the old Civic Center. I mean, I think we all recognize the obsolescence, and I mean, it was an old library, Chamber of Commerce, the Civic Center, and it's kind of, it's facing some issues. But building a support building that would help with the special events, but also opening up the green space and providing more green space, for the residents. That was narrowed in from the 2018 update. And that was approved in April, and some of those projects are underway, as many of you heard at the COCO CRA meeting when Charlene Newman gave the update. So in terms of the COCO CRA board, they considered and they approved the updated community redevelopment, agency redevelopment plan at the special COCO CRA meeting on September 18th, and they recommended that the City Council approve the 2018 COCO redevelopment agency plan. That's a requirement of the statute. You have to have a public hearing. The governing body shall hold a public hearing on a proposed modification in any community redevelopment plan. Again, pursuant to the statutes, the city did notice Brevard County, because they are the sole other taxing authority beside the city of COCO that provide funding to the redevelopment agency. We noticed the Brevard County Board of County Commission chairperson, Pritchard, and county manager of 8 via email, as well as the certified mail. And not a requirement, but the statute says you can just provide written notice, or you can do a presentation. I offered, they had 2 meetings, the 9th and the 23rd, and I extended the offer to present the update plan to them. And I did have a conversation with the county manager. 9th's gone. That was the idea that we were going to try to do. I don't know if they're going to ask me to come on the 23rd, so.
I hope they do.
Pursuant to the statutes, the City of COCO legally advertised the public hearings for this ordinance to adopt the updated, modified COCO CR redevelopment plan in the Florida Today newspaper on September 25th, 2018. I mentioned that the CRA already has recommended that the City Council approve the 2018 Community Redevelopment Agency Plan. Thus, the requested action this evening is to approve the first reading of Ordinance 10-2018, approving the 2018 Community Redevelopment, COCO Community Redevelopment Agency Plan update. So with that, I'll ask questions from the council, and then you can open it to the public, Mr. Mayor. Come back.
I know we're not talking about any details, but I just want to say, in my lifetime, I've seen 3 or 4 T-docks blown down because of hurricanes. Consider concrete, and then, like Ed keeps bringing up, and he's right about a police substation potentially in the captain's building, that's the Harbor Master building. And then as far as like Taylor Park and all that, it looks pretty good. I mean, I think we're in the right direction. I don't really have a comment or a question after that. Brenda? I know, we're going to do that.
Earlier tonight at the CRA meeting, there was mention of how long Captain Ed has been on the CRA, so I think he's probably the only one who's been through all those updates that John mentioned, but can't imagine what Cocoa Village would be if we had not had this tool
Yeah.
to use in Cocoa Village. I mean, it's been amazing what we've been able to accomplish with this. I remember being a part of, long before I became an elected official, being a part of the last update and some of the public meetings and the public input where we had like 100 people in the Civic Center all sitting around and doing little projects to decide what elements we wanted in this downtown plan. And it was, I won't mention the city staff that was present at the time, but it was actually some really good meetings with a lot of public input. Unfortunately, a lot of those people that were there are no longer with us, unlike Captain Ed, who's going to be with us forever and ever and ever, we hope. Knowing and watching how this developed and seeing how it's had to change over time because of, you know, other things that have happened, it's just amazing. I mean, to me, that this plan has progressed how it has over the
20-something years.
22 years I've been watching it, yeah. So, yeah, it's, to watch all those little elements that we discussed 20 years ago actually come
Really,
into fruition.
The focus
It's really
is on
interesting.
more of the core of the town.
Yeah.
You know, now we know we need to connect and we need to do the right things there. So
Yeah,
that's
but
true.
I mean, John was right when he started his presentation. He said they know these things don't happen overnight. It takes years and years and years. And I can sit here now and say, yeah, for 22 years I have watched, and that's how long it's taken some of these elements to take
yeah.
place. So, yeah,
It's never done.
I know. I know. It's
That's really
pretty scary. I was like a new mom when I started this, and now I'm old enough to be a grandma. So,
Oh, that's fine.
yeah.
An
Anyway,
announcement.
thanks. I appreciate the staff's hard work on this. Yeah, I know it's a lot of work. Thank you guys very much.
And John, again, by acquiring all of Lee Winter Park, you know, that helps a lot. And just remind the public, we did run a referendum on the protecting Cocoa Riverfront Park. And just to remind everybody, from Whitley Bay all the way over to St. Mark's, generally speaking, it's all public space and it's sacred. We want to enhance it and make sure we have a great connection to the river. Again, like we started with 160 years ago, but we protected it. And so we're not going to do anything to hamper that. So, you know, again, when you go to Cocoa Riverfront Park with the kids, friends, you know, John's not there with his hand out, and you don't have to pay. You know, it's all public space. You know, it's
right.
the big bad government's going to be out of our pockets. You go north, you go south. It's all really, most of it's public, private, with a few entryways from you know, public space, but not much. And this whole thing working on for years and years is really, it's like Brenda said. You know, we're not going to be here when it's probably done, but we're going to make sure it's on its way. And we have the opportunity to have the best, coolest riverfront to serve the people, the citizens of Cocoa and the region from here to St. Augustine. I think St. Augustine's probably got about what we want to have, but we're very, very happy how it's going. Anybody want to say anything before I start letting people talk?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Whipple?
Yes, I just want to comment about what's been done over the past decade that I've been here, and I'm very happy with the plan going forward. I think Mr. DeCandish and the group has done an excellent job in moving the city forward in a positive way. I just want to make a comment about the areas that we haven't actually discussed. The Heart of Cocoa Community Center, Mr. DeCandish, could you speak a little bit about that in that area as to what our plans are going north of that facility?
Yeah, there actually are some very specific aspirational and goals that have been established for the Heart of Cocoa neighborhood, such as envision the opportunity to relocate, I think it's more of a service station or a central station for AT&T, and the plan envisions if that could be relocated, and the idea of developing a public space there. I know there's been some streetscape projects that have happened there previously. The Heart of Cocoa Community Meeting Room is nearing completion. And then the reality is there are a number of lots that are available for the purchase and/or, we've seen some duplexes and some other things that have occurred, in terms of redevelopment within there.
Okay,
Still
I'd like
opportunities
to-
for more.
Yes, I'd like to see us concentrate a little bit more on those things that we haven't spent very much time on for planning going forward in that way, in that particular area. So if we can include that in CRA meetings as to what our vision is for that particular area, I mean, put it in writing so we can have something to concentrate on to upgrade that particular area. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
And Mr. Mayor, just in terms of thanking staff, I think it really needs to be thanked because, I know in 2008, we paid about $75,000 for the waterfront master plan. To actually turn that into an actual redevelopment plan and, that was formatted consistent, with the requirements of the statutes, and making sure that we ticked all those boxes, that effort probably would have, required potentially about between $75,000 and $100,000 in a consultant, and would take it longer. So what, the COCO CRA approved it in June, and then we, worked with P&Z, staffed it, Karen, Nancy, Charlene, Samaya, Larry Lallo did, Matt worked with, in IT, Ari providing the GIS, the map support, Samantha the graphics. I mean, there's a lot of people, finance, helping to make sure as we looked at the TIF revenue projections, Public Works providing information related to some of the projects. I mean, it was a really a staff effort that really saved the CRA and the city, substantial amount of money. I mean, and that's, I know people like, well, what's been going on? We did this in-house.
Yeah.
This was done in-house. We took 3 plans, and I used this illustration before, or if I could say 4. We took the 1997, the 2008, the 2018, and we came up with a plan that complies and is consistent with the statutory requirements of the law. So that will take us to 2041 and enable the agency to undertake those activities.
Right, one thing like that is, for the public, is, you look at the CRA area, which is the downtown, plus north and a little west, you don't necessarily have the greatest income level. So the first thing a developer does, he looks, the medium income's not like Viera. We're not like maybe some parts of Melbourne. And so you don't get the hog wild building like you'd love to see. And, all we've done in my whole life is set the stage for people to come in and do really cool developments. And we're making headway, but we don't have the income level to have it come in as heavy as those other areas. That's why you see it's lagged down, even though we have the best city, the best location, no doubt. But one thing I like to say is Mr. Whipple's right, going into Hart, but one thing we don't ever talk about is the north side, like going up Forest and maybe running some bricks up there at some point. I'm leaving in a month, less than a month, and my first project's going to be a redevelopment project on something I own on Forest. But why I'm saying that is I'm willing to give a little bit of an easement or whatever for an small entry sign. Welcome to Historic Cocoa Village, a little small and something, But I don't care, whatever the city they do, but we need to look at the north side too. That's very important.
Yeah, I would also.
Along with the hard cocoa.
I agree. And
I know you do.
each of those areas are identified in the plan. But I would be remiss not to thank, notwithstanding that the performance of his baseball team last night, the city attorney and Kristen, who spent a lot of time and effort in working with staff to ensure that, as we went through this process, we were, checking off the boxes. From the outset, he laid out a very detailed memorandum to help guide staff as we were undertaking this initiative. So I thank Anthony.
It's very important. This stuff's going to play out for a long time.
This is a legacy that the city is building today for generations to come, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, et cetera, so that, just like the Riverfront Park, That's something that, many years ago, the vision was there, it was built, and look at the enjoyment we get out of it today. So this plan is only going to enhance
All that, yeah.
everything that's been done up to this point. So
Right, and everything we do is
congratulations on that.
make people
There's two
move.
ways to look at Riverfront Park. When the grand opening was my first, it was a recruitment visit to the city of Cocoa. So you can either look at that and say, that's how we got them, or you can say, wow, okay, cool. But it was the grand opening of
was.
Riverfront Park in November of 2011.
Yeah.
Or excuse me,
Two.
2001.
Was it 2001?
2001,
Yeah.
yes, started, yeah.
I remember.
So,
And then John made history by doubling the size of the city by annexation.
Within like a year or something.
Yeah, he was like a buzzsaw. Okay, so I'll tell you what, I'm going to open this up to the public. We're going to start with Judy McClooney. Is anybody else like to speak behind Judy? Alec? Anybody else? I'm trying to gear up minutes here. Mr. City Attorney, can I give her 5 minutes, or or do I have to stay consistent with delegations?
I mean, it's a public hearing
Yeah.
item, so you can afford additional time to the extent necessary.
Okay, is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
5,
5, okay.
yeah.
Sure.
Judy, how you doing?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for all your hard work and for the waterfront particularly. I want to bring up a perhaps forgotten point that the Cocoa Community Redevelopment Agency is exactly for that. It is a redevelopment agency. Its mandate and the whole reason that it was formed, according to local and state rules, is to address areas found to qualify as slum and blighted. And in the agency plan update, page 12, 13, it says it's for the elimination and prevention of the development or spread of slums and blight, or for the provision of affordable housing, whether for rent or for sale, to residents of low or moderate income. Now, there's an area of the city that is one of our great treasures. It's a real gem, and that is called, in our plans here, south of the village. It is along the southern city limits, with Brevard Avenue to the west, Indian River to the east, and Derby and Church Streets to the north. I hope, if you haven't, hopefully most have, driven or walked through that area off Derby Street. If you did, you would see single-family, mostly modest homes, some call them cottages. They are neighborly, they have porches, people know each other, they're friendly. Almost all of them are marked with historical markers, and they are a great source of pride, this Derby Street, off Derby Street community. They should be protected and included in tours of proud historical neighborhoods. So the question here we need to ask is it protected? So we look at the plan, the Community Redevelopment Agency Plan Update, to see what the zoning is there. The existing zoning, page 29, is multiple family dwelling. The future land use, page 26, is medium density residential. If you look at the code, the district code, multiple family dwellings, it reads, multiple family dwellings, 4 or more units per building, not more than 15 dwelling units per acre. And not more for 2 stories than 10 units per acre. Okay, so this is more, definitely more than a single family area. Now, there are several zoning designations. There are RU210, low-density, single-family and multiple-family districts. This is intended to apply to mixed, low-density, multifamily, and single-dwelling residential development. And so that's one classification. It allows multifamily dwellings of more than 4 units, providing such use was in existence as of the date of adoption of the ordinance. There is a single-family residential district, and that is mainly reserved for the area to the west of Florida Avenue. If you look at the light blue on the code, that's where that comes in. So what is the zoning for this area that we want to protect? According to what I see right now on the master plan, it is, well, as we said, it is medium-density residential. And medium density is multifamily, 15 dwelling units per acre, and it can include larger condos and such. So I'm concerned that if we keep this zoned for a higher density, we won't have single families. We may be endangering this district and perhaps spreading more difficulties and blight. So I'm just going to ask, isn't it time to protect, of all areas in the city, this historical area with the correct zoning, at least as low density? There are different classifications. You know more than I do about all the zoning, but I know there are other options, and this mid-density, it seems to portend that that little community that's so valued may be jeopardized.
Chief, thank you. Thank you.
Just
Yes, sir.
to provide context, first, this plan does not amend any of the zoning district regulations, and it was found in conformance with the comprehensive plan by the P&Z board. But to the point, the area in which that was discussed, it does include, I mean, multifamily is 4 units or more. It does include La Ensenada, some of the other the condominiums, Oleander. There are some places where, yes, you know, that little portion, Oak and all that. I mean, somebody would have to acquire all those parcels, but I don't know that, and I don't have the zoning map directly in front of me because this kind of shows what the existing development pattern is, but it does also provide for the preservation, you know, in terms of, you know, as you know, Councilman Whipple discussed, the Heart of Cocoa, and there's a consent decree to which the city and the CRA, you know, must affirmatively, you know, enforce.
Aren't there some apartment complexes in that?
There are. They're right there in the corner of Oak, and so I mean that's why you can't say it's a wholly single-family area. There is some areas. There's, you know, obviously there's even businesses there. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's not. There is it's a mixture of uses, if you will, in terms of single-family. There's some duplexes. There's some 2-story La Ensenada. There's the Oak, that corner. The revitalizers redid it across Oleander. Mm-hmm. And then there's some larger lots, I mean, homes that you might see literally that, I think.
Well, I think there's one on
Noah
Derby
Butts,
Street that's
Noah
for
Butts'
apartments.
old house, you know, you'd probably see somewhere up further north than, you know, on Indian River Drive. I mean, so it's really, there's a mixture. There's no single dominant in that, you know, that southeast portion of the district.
So, one comment. So to satisfy her concerns, your answer to her concerns about the low density versus increasing that density, your answer to her is what?
Well, first, actually, the CRA worked and then made an application many years ago, back in 2013, to adopt overlay districts that established, you know, to govern the form-based code, or what everybody calls the Cocoa Waterfront Overlay District. And that provides, you know, the building typology, but it also provides, you know, based on the uses. So it didn't substitute and or, you know, eradicate the underlying zoning.
Okay.
that zoning still exists.
So we're not changing any?
No, this is not changing the zoning, no.
Okay.
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 All right, Mr. Greenwood, I'd ask you to fill a card out after, again, please.
Certainly will. Alex Greenwood, 640 Brevard Avenue. Very quick, this is in reference to the consent decree area. I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, there's a lot of people that don't know, but there was never really a budget for maintaining that area when it was renovated. And because of that, we have lost streetlights, and we have lost, I've counted 40 trees that were, oak trees that were planted there. We lost them because nobody was able to keep them watered to take on their own. You don't have to water them forever, for the year or year and a half in order for them to take, and then they take off on their own. It's all because there was no budget set for the maintenance of it. Anytime that there's an issue for that area, you have to go before the council to ask for funds to fix whatever the issue is. That's the only way it's handled. So I hope that that's something that can be corrected, since you're mentioning.
And relook.
Yes.
Yeah, because I own property there, and I regretted seeing the things that have not been maintained. And they were wonderful. It was a hard sell. We had to, went to all the meetings that were there. A lot of the people didn't trust what was being told by the city for the renovations that they did, for some of the same reasons of what I just mentioned. Because they thought that it would be a quick fix, and then everybody would go away. And that's basically what it looks like now. So I hope that there's some budgeting going on that now can prevent that. There's lights that's not been replaced for years. I know it's because they were deliberately damaged, and that's a whole other story. That could have been a way to handle it, but because there was no monies for it and no budget for it, it sat. So
I heard people were scrapping them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Alex.
Mr. Mayor, let me.
I just would add that we have replaced certain lights in there, and I guess one thing I would say is, when the CRA started off with the streetscape project in the heart of Cocoa, the primary emphasis was going to be Hewlett, to create like that, that attractive, collector corridor coming into the neighborhood. And the residents were the one that drove the process and said, no, I want you to do the residential streets. And street trees were planted on, in many instances, private property, of which there was reuse, and they didn't water them. So, I mean, we have worked.
I just had Derby Street ask me
yeah.
for bricks, said the city promised them in 1998.
nobody knew they were required to maintain the trees.
Oh, really? Yeah, they just planted them, huh?
Well, I think that's an issue that we're going to have to address
That'd be
going
future.
forward.
That'd be
It's a future, something that we really need to do. That's been one of my pet peeves for quite some time now, about those oak trees that wasn't taken care of.
And again,
about the
everybody,
lamps.
we're talking about, where Village Timeout is right here, Timeout, the whole neighborhood behind it, from
Yes.
there to US 1. Looking to do
Yes.
the right thing, get it back up and running.
Mr. Wheatgriff, you were to do a study on what's out and what we need to replace and get the lights burning again, et cetera. How are we doing on that project?
Yes, all the lights were repaired that are in place. There was a couple lights that have been run over 3 times and not replaced. There's like 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah, they're about 6,000 apiece or more.
Yeah.
That's a
And-
lot of money.
And
So after 2 or 3 times, they were real close to a driveway, and there's one on Orange, I think one on Smith Lane that, there's a box over them. The rest have been repaired, replaced. We've had Car Wreck take out a whole electrical box. That's, several years ago. That was replaced. It's just a lot of work down there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the Heart of Cocoa Community Meeting Room is substantially complete. It's doing punch list items
That's
right
good.
now.
Okay.
That is good.
Well, I was just gonna add, the streetlight that was mentioned, too close to the driveway, that was deliberately being torn down, that streetlight. And I didn't pursue it because of the trouble we were having with that particular address, which is 228 Orange Street.
Yeah, okay.
It involved SWAT teams and all of that. That's been since stopped, but now it wasn't because it was near the driveway. But again, that was just never replaced.
I like the fact that we can look at the whole district, or and then
Exactly.
look at AT&T, because I know AT&T is like, hey, we'll move if you want us to.
Exactly.
It'd be a central park.
That'd be nice.
That could be just really
And
cool.
everybody that owns property there, they would be thrilled to see that.
Yeah.
It's
Open
just
that
that
thing up all the way.
they were excited to see the renovations, but now it's reversing itself, being blighted again,
Yeah.
because it's not being maintained.
Okay, all right.
That's all.
Anybody else like to speak on the CRA? No? Okay, I'm going to close it to the public, bring it back to council. I want to say one thing. Brenda, remember we brought the mayor of Charleston? He came in and did a day and a half. He said that the downtown here looked as good as any road in his downtown. He also said the park, Cocoa Riverfront Park, was the most important piece of property in your city. Protect it, build around it, make sure it's free. You want all the families, you want people to come. And so this just, all we're doing is expanding the beauty of it all, right?
Joe, his name is
Mayor Riley.
Joe Riley, yes.
He's responsible for
Charleston.
the modern
Wasn't he mayor
rebuild
for
of
like
Charleston.
20 or 30 years?
40 years.
40 years, yeah.
It's a great guy.
Yeah, they don't believe in term limits there.
No, they don't.
So the requested action, Mr. Mayor and
Yes, sir.
council, is to approve the first reading of ordinance 10-2018, approving the 2018 Community Redevelopment Agency Plan Update. And there,
Maybe a slide there.
Oh, ready?
Anybody want to say anything else before we go?
No.
No?
Motion to approve. Second.
Second down here. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
again, thank you to all
Future.
staff. And then
Thank you.
the second reading will be at the next council
Yes.
meeting.
Great
Great.
job by staff. Appreciate them
Great
saving us
job.
all that
Thank
money.
you.
Joanne. Good job.
This is not, none of this is easy.
No.
This is great. Okay, so we'll go, that's a big deal there. So, okay, so we'll go to Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Asking council to approve the reduction of a current code enforcement lien for the property located at 2228 Salem Drive from $34,250 to $3,425 as recommended by staff, so that related city expenses and staff time are reimbursed.
Okay.
Motion approved. I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
Okay.
I'm a no. I think when somebody has a house for 240 days and they don't bother to do anything to clean up the trash out of the yard, they don't get a reduction like that, I'm sorry. Especially when they're a
Okay.
business and not a individual property owner.
Okay.
You know, getting the money that we're getting on that property is better than nothing.
Yeah, I just feel bad for the neighbors who put up with it.
$3,425 is better than zero.
Yeah, well,
So,
they'll sell it and make about 40 or 50,000, so they're not losing anything.
well, the city didn't lose either.
The neighbors sure did, almost
okay,
a
let's
year
go.
of that.
Mr. City Manager, next. Okay.
Actually, the assistant city manager and the
Okay.
city attorney will be handling this matter.
Yes, the next item is to review the city staff report regarding the ownership and operation of McFarland Park and to provide any comments and direction as deemed appropriate by the city council. There are a number of items in your agenda packet to include recently distributed petition or additional petitions from property owners in Carlton Terrace subdivision. By way of background, city staff was contacted by the Brevard County Parks and Recreation Department to meet with not only them, but also some interested residents from the Carlton Terrace neighborhood surrounding McFarland Park. And we facilitated that meeting in August. And at the meeting, there were concerns by the residents raised regarding the safety in the park. Just a little bit of background on the park. We have maintenance agreement with Brevard County dating back to 1965, where the city, through an agreement, provides maintenance of our city-owned parks through Brevard County. And that was established in 1961 through District 4 Recreational Taxing District. And that taxing district was set up for the benefit of all those that live within it for recreational services. And so this particular park, McFarland Park, as it was discovered, you know, there was a plat dating back to 1926 that dedicated that particular property to the lot owners of Carlton Terrace. Now, since that time, the Brevard County Property Appraiser has listed the City of Cocoa as the owner. The city has undertaken maintenance improvements, capital improvements alongside the county for a number of years, as I previously stated, in 1965. That park currently contains a small boat ramp, boat dock, little picnic pavilion, and then just some green space along the river. The safety concerns brought to us by the residents were in part due to 24/7 access to that park. The elevation of the park is such that from Indian River Drive to the base of the river, you know, could be, you know, it's a 15 to 20 foot drop. There's a lot of vegetation at the entryway, so you can't see down into the park from the roadway or back out, but yet you could see headlights coming in. And so the potential for various activities to take place is there. Over the years, you know, through handshake agreements, residents of Carlton Terrace did lock and unlock that gate to maintain some level of security. In July, the county began with their own staff locking and unlocking the gate for during the nighttime period. It was determined by those residents in that area that just securing the gate in the evenings is simply not enough for the perceived safety and propensity for incidents that could take place in that park, short of establishing a police officer 24/7 at the base of it. And so they did raise some legitimate safety concerns, along with an issue of ownership with the city, and that being the only legal documentation that could be found in the 1926 plat that dedicated that, or it stated that it was dedicated for park purposes to the lot owners. The city subsequently undertook a title search to determine any, you know, interested owners in that property, and it was determined that there were three, of which one was the original developer, because his interests hadn't been conveyed to the lot owners. The lot owners themselves, based on the plat, and then the City of Cocoa, as found on the Brevard County Property Appraiser, as the owner, although no supporting legal transfer or documentation of that. And so city staff did some more historical work, again, finding the maintenance records of the park, some capital improvements such as the boat dock and ramp, of which, you know, we had to submit for permitting, or the county back in the early 70s. That dock was built multiple times. It was destroyed. The city in 1998 made some enhancements to it through a grant submittal. You know, part of that is providing ownership or record of ownership. They simply submitted the 1926 plat. So for whatever reason, the state agency at that time thought that was sufficient ownership to provide a permit to the city to undertake those improvements. And at this point in time, there exists a concern over liability within that park, because you have a question of ownership, potential lack of insurance if there were a claim. And I think Anthony can go into more detail as far as the legal aspects of the current situation that this park is in. And Mr. Mayor, I believe you also have a card from one of the...
I have two cards.
property owners.
Yeah.
I had hoped to, I believe, kind of condense their comments, and he's asking for approximately 10 minutes to convey those. If Anthony has anything more to add.
Anthony? What do you think?
I guess the only thing that just I would emphasize, because Matt did a real nice job summing up what could be discerned from the records, is, as Matt indicated, this park for decades has been maintained by the City of Cocoa and Brevard County, using the interlocal agreement arrangement, and notwithstanding all of that maintenance and maintaining McFarland Park as a public park, when the title search was done, there is nothing in the records, the land records of Brevard County, conveying any interest formally to the City of Cocoa. There just isn't anything of record. In fact, the plat indicates that this property is dedicated to the owners of the lots in Carlton Terrace only for park purposes. So I just want to emphasize that. But even though that's what Brevard County Records indicates, the property appraiser's website indicates that Cocoa is the owner of the park. But as Matt said, there's no recorded document indicating that City of Cocoa as an entity is the owner of that. That is just that's not supported by the land records of Brevard County. So I wouldn't put much.
This isn't the first time this has come
up. Sometimes this happens.
This has come up many, many years ago.
Sometimes that happens.
I want to say it's late 60s, 70s, it was an issue.
Something must have happened in the 70s if we got a grant, yeah.
Yeah, this was written about. I don't know if it's in council minutes or it's in the Today paper.
It's probably in the paper.
But it was way back.
Yeah.
So for decades there's just obviously it's been maintained as a public park, but today, flash forward today, there isn't anybody here that goes back that far to try to isolate why that occurred under the circumstances.
Yeah.
Now, the residents of Carlton Terrace that may have been here a while may have some information that they would like to share with the council.
Yeah.
Whether or not that information could be corroborated up here on the dais, I don't see how that can be done. We've tried to look at whatever record documents exist to try to piece this situation together, and we summarized what we could so far. In fact, some additional information was given to us before the meeting that, frankly, we didn't have, showing that Brevard County back in 1973 submitted a grant application and to the state, and that document has a little site plan that indicates that the property is owned by the City of Cocoa and leased to Brevard County District, Parks and Rec District, for recreational park.
So something's either missing or
something's
dreadfully wrong.
So everybody has been moving forward for a long time under this impression that the City of Cocoa owns this park, but that's not what the plat says. And there's some case law that I found. I've shared it with some of the lawyers in the community that reside in Carlton Terrace, and I think that's been passed along. But there's situations where municipalities have been able to secure through the courts a park easement in situations that are similar to this, not exactly the same as our situation, but what the courts would emphasize is that over a period of time, or I said what the courts might find is that over a period of time, if a municipality is maintaining land that was dedicated to lot owners of a particular subdivision for park purposes for a long period of time, under certain facts, then the courts would recognize a public recreational easement for the benefit of the public over that land. But it's very fact-intensive, and that's something that a court would have to, consider with all of the facts presented in order to make that determination. And we cited that case just to make council aware that, the courts would recognize a public park easement under certain circumstances. And I want to emphasize that we're not saying that in this particular case, a court would recognize a public park easement in favor of the city of Cocoa. We're just indicating to you all that
Let's keep the attorneys out of it and do it
it's a
right.
possibility.
That's how I look at it.
Yes, so, I just wanted to just emphasize that, so I have no further comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Anthony, that's good to know. Something, again, I know Brenda probably struck her the same way. This isn't the first time this has come up. It's been a very, very long time.
Okay.
Right? So I want to hear what the speakers have to say.
I have some questions that
Sure.
get answered from Anthony
Sure.
first. So it's your opinion that we don't own this property? Okay.
City of Cocoa
Okay.
is not the fee title owner of this property.
Okay.
Based on the title report.
If the residents, which I'm looking at a petition that has probably less than 10% of the actual residents, or somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% of the actual residents signed it. If the residents of Carlton Terrace actually want to have their park back and maintain it and have the city get out of it, what is the method for us finding out? Is there a way that we could do a vote and let the residents of Carlton Terrace vote to decide whether or not they want to keep their park or give it to the city? I mean, is there a voting mechanism for that, like we've done with neighborhoods that wanted to annex? I mean, is there like a process for letting them vote? I mean, there's 100 and some odd properties. I think every property owner should have a say and have the right to voice their opinion, but they need to do that through some kind of legal process, I would think.
Well, it's my understanding that they don't have a homeowners association. So, and this is not common area that is maintained by a homeowners association. But what's indicative of the language on the plat is that the lot owners, regardless of what action the council may take, is listed as having an interest in this land.
Okay.
The lot owners, this has been dedicated to the lot owners for park purposes. Even the case that I cited, even if the courts were to recognize a public recreational easement, it would be recognized that easement exists along with the dedication that was granted to the lot owners in the plat in the first case, in the first instance. It would be shared interest. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying that that's what the courts would hold today, but, they have this interest, in my opinion, that was dedicated back in 1926. So I mean, that's to each lot owner. I don't know how they would, as a group, handle this particular situation, but I would imagine that each lot owner may have a separate and diverse opinion regarding
I don't understand, what if I'm a lot
land.
owner, will they have a financial responsibility for this property now that?
Well, my point is, that responsibility was conveyed in 1926 when the plat was prepared and recorded. And they've had that interest since that time.
And nothing else has been recorded that we know of.
We did a title report, and nothing came back conveying any interest in easement or fee title to the city of Cocoa.
Yeah.
All that's popping up is the plat. Back in 1926, there was an amended plat which subdivided some of the properties along the river. For Carlton Terrace, there are approximately 187 lots or so, give or take, for Carlton Terrace. And you know, it appears that, and this is just me talking, and Matt and I have talked about it. It appeared back in 1926. I mean, this dedication was intended to serve the Carlton Terrace area as a neighborhood type recreational property and having access to the river. That's what it at least appears on the face of the plat. And it morphed in, you know, almost 100 years to this particular to the situation that we face today.
Well, because they don't have a homeowners association, just assume that we give up all of the park. It's no longer ours, and we're not going to do anything to it. And now it belongs to these 187 property owners. And we have say a code enforcement action against the dock or something in that park. Who do we cite for code enforcement if 187 people own this? And who pays if there's a code enforcement lien? And who's responsible for fixing it? And what if there's a drainage issue? And
those are all legitimate questions.
well, if I'm a property owner in Carlton Terrace, I'm a little bit nervous now, you know, because I've got responsibility for something I didn't know I had responsibility for.
Again, it's been on the plat since 1926.
We're going to move this along.
One other point. This is today. That's not the way these properties are set up. I mean, today you would create a homeowners association, and you would have a common area, and the homeowners association would manage the common area. They would be able to assess the property owners, you know, dues, so they can pay for the maintenance and upkeep of common area. It doesn't appear that was ever done for this particular neighborhood.
So it sounds like
how they would manage this collectively.
They've got some decisions to make.
They would have decisions to make and manage it as they would seem is in their best interest.
Okay, so we have two cards, and we're gonna call up. I'm gonna chop this up. I can't read it. I'm sorry.
I don't understand what we're being asked to do because we obviously don't own the property.
Well, we want to hear this. We want to hear.
Okay.
Because we're probably gonna go to legal.
Councilman Warner, part of the reason for bringing this forward was to establish some sort of documentation in the history of this park.
Yes.
So that we know going forward, and there's record of this, that, you know, we're aware of the issue. This is what we could find. And I didn't mention, but currently the gate is closed 24/7. And the reason why that was done is it was originally dedicated to those lot owners in Carlton Terrace. And in order to do that, you know, the element within that park that kind of makes it more regional, that may draw others from outside, is that boat ramp and dock. And so by closing that gate, it kind of eliminates that use, of which, you know, the dock has been destroyed from Hurricane Irma. And, you know, the county, it was on their list for repair, you know, upwards of a year out. That's been put on hold at this point.
I bet they're happy about that.
But the gate is secure, and I do believe that we will be receiving a letter from the county stating that they will not continue maintenance on that park, since it's not owned by the city of Cocoa, and therefore not in conformance with the agreement.
And I almost want to echo, because I think it was important, and we talked about it, the manager's office and I, important to get this information out to the council and get it out to the public, so it's on the record. You know, what everyone decides at the end of the day on how to handle this particular situation is another issue, but at this point, we just wanted to get this information out there so there wasn't any, you know, speculation or he said, she said. We just tried to get some of the facts brought out at a public meeting and on the record.
Right.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's go to a couple cards. Troy Owender, is that it? All right. How you doing?
How many minutes, sir?
How many we want to allow?
He had requested, I believe, 10 minutes.
Council, what do you think?
You're representing a group?
Yeah, if he's representing the group of homeowners, that's fine with me.
No problem. I have a second card, by the way.
There's also another homeowner in Carlton Terrace.
Yeah, well, it's, Barry. Barry's here. Okay, we'll start. Let's do it.
Very good. My name is Troy Oringer. I'm a resident, 2401 North Indian River Drive, and part of the Carlton Terrace development. I would like to correct the record just very momentarily, if I may, before I start. That is, the initial plat that was generated by the Davis brothers when they put together this development was actually in 1924. Then there was an amended plat which dealt with the waterfront community itself, with the exception of the park. That was actually platted in 1926. So there are those two plats. But what I really would like to do is just to take a moment and point out some of the things that the city attorney has acknowledged before you here, and the position of many of the residents and the homeowners within Carlton Terrace. And I appreciate your patience with all of this. First of all, the city acknowledges, I think, within the documentation that has been provided to you, that the city, as each of you have acknowledged to this point, has no recorded interest in the park. We'd like to present this information as a matter of record, if nothing else, to protect our due process should we decide to go forward, contingent upon the city's position with it. I'd quote also that the city staff could not locate any records which identify exactly when the city began maintaining or operating the McFarland Park and the reason for doing so, under what permissions, from what landowners or whatever. Nonetheless, we all recognize that it occurred. The fact that the city has no record interest in the park is both the beginning and the end to this matter. With the sole exception that the city attorney has raised a potential city claim based upon a district court of appeals decision in and around the city of Miami. The circumstances are far different. There were public meetings held, and in those public meetings, the landowners who had owned the property failed to show at any of the public meetings and to acknowledge that they didn't want the city to take the property. This is quite the contrary to this case for many of the residents. We would submit to you that really, legally, it only takes one of those property members to step forward to object, and that objection in itself, based upon the District Court of Appeals decision, should hold weight. In this case, we certainly have more than one, and probably prior to this moving forward, there will be numerous other petitions. I would also point out that when we look at the number of petitions that are submitted, many of these petitioners own more than one lot in this property itself. So their percentage of ownership may be more than just the original fractional deal as to how it was subdivided. The city attorney has cited Eastern Realty, I think, for the proposition that an offer of public dedication by the residents may be inferred from the residents' lack of objection, which we've just mentioned briefly here a moment ago. If so, the local government may accept the offer by resolution. No inference of an offer of public dedication by the residents of Carlton Terrace can be drawn from the factual background with McFarland Park, I would submit to you. The property appraiser's records, which you've already been told about, which go back to '81, have mistakenly shown that the city is the record owner, acknowledged. While the county property appraiser's program does not go back any farther than '81, we're told, as discussed momentarily, it seems clear that the county property appraiser's records incorrectly showed the city as the owner, beginning in 1965 or thereabouts, from the records that we've been able to research and find. Therefore, the residents have basically been misled as to the true status, and I don't say this in casting dispersions, but just as a point of fact, for at least 53 years or so, give or take, plus. It's important to note that the number of times that these properties have changed hands since 1924, 1926, that routinely when a property title search is done, they only reference the property, for the most part, that the residence is on, and not perhaps the appurtenant property ownership, which in fact this park is. In sharp contrast, the court in Eastern Realty pointed out that there had been a series of public hearings by the city regarding the park, and the residents in those public hearings made no objections. Therefore, the evidence was that the residents were aware that they were the record owners and failed to object to any infirmment of ownership to the city. There was no evidence to the contrary, the courts decided. Therefore, the District Court of Appeals, held that an offer of public dedication may be inferred from the failure to object to the public use of the park itself. Quite the contrary with this circumstance, if I may point out. While the residents of Carlton Terrace, having been, again I use the term, misled as to the true status of ownership over this duration of 53 years, no court probably is going to conclude that an offer of public dedication can be so inferred from our circumstances. The county property appraiser requires a copy of the deed or other conveyance before showing party as an owner of a parcel. The county was unable to find any records as to why it entered the city as owner of McFarland Park. In 1965, in which the city represented to the county that the city was the record owner, and that's the first record I can find of a lease agreement between the city of Cocoa. I heard earlier 1961, but the written records within the McFarland Park records indicate 1965. It was a 25-year contract. It didn't sunset before it was renewed for a second 25-year contract, and the third 25-year contract came up in 2011, and it was never executed it was presented by the county to the city, but it was never executed by the city. So it stands either in a month-to-month scenario at this point, or whatever legal interpretation would be made. As the city has recently acknowledged, the title search shows that the city was never the recorded owner of the park, for the record. Therefore, the city has been incorrectly claiming ownership of the park since at least December 8th of 1965, or perhaps even earlier. It seems clear that it was from this lease and accompanying incorrect representations of ownership that was made by the city to the county that led the property appraiser's office to take the actions they did and to incorrectly show that the city, as owner of beginning basically in 1965 or thereabouts, from what the records we've been able to find. Therefore, it would seem that the residents again were misled as to the true ownership of the park for at least 53 years with this. And none of them would have had routine occasion, since their title searches on their properties and things never pointed this out, unless they had gone back and reviewed the plat map and had looked at that. This was not the only time that the city made representations of ownership of the park. We located numerous documents, another lease from the city that I mentioned there in 1986. They represented, again, the same scenario to the county. We've also located applications that the city, jointly with the county, that made to various government entities, from the Army Corps of Engineers through DEP and various other entities, primarily having to do with the waterfront and the dock issues and getting permits to do those things. And again, specifically in one of the documents that I found, the city, by inference, submitted those documents to the Army Corps of Engineers, representing that they were the owners of that property in itself, which in fact they weren't. On a separate point, the court in Eastern Realty stated that the residents had not acted in that scenario to revoke the offer of public dedication before the city, formally accepted by resolution, the dedication of that property. Even if the residents of Carlton Terrace had made an offer of public dedication, which they have not to this point, the residents revoked it in the notices that were presented to you in the forms of those petitions. Forgive me if I mispronounce it, Mr. Fuhrer, his memo states that, back to us, that there are 187 lots in Carlton Terrace and that the consensus of the residents is not known. I would submit to you that consensus is not required in this scenario, since each one of those residents has a fractional portion of ownership within that within their claim to the property itself. So this totally misses the point. Each resident record owner of a percentage interest in the park, and as such, the objection we submit to you, even of a single resident, would be legally sufficient under the Eastern Realty District Court of Appeals decision. In Eastern Realty, the evidence was that all of the residents had failed to object. However, residents are collecting signatures still as we speak here tonight. There are a couple of other issues, very briefly, if I may. Mr. Fuhrer's memo states that the residents previously raised safety concerns, which we did. But however, this grossly understates our stated concerns relative to the park itself. The park has had a long reputation, as many here in this room know, in Cocoa, Rockledge, Merritt Island, Port St. John, et cetera, going back decades as to the meeting place to sell, buy, and use drugs, as well as a meeting place for public sex. We are not talking about high school kids here, as in Inspiration Point scenario, as I pointed out in a previous meeting. These are adult pushers, buyers, users of street drugs, and those seeking public sex. We recognize that the local constabularies that we have between the Cocoa Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, they make a valiant effort to police this, but they're limited in their abilities strictly because of the scenario that they have to address.
Troy, I got to cut you off. By law, I have to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Very
I
well.
got you 10 minutes. I'm sorry. And you make a great point.
Well, I
That's been
wanted
something we've
these
been-
things to be, and if I may, one last issue, very briefly, the liability issue.
Yeah,
All right?
exactly.
And we'd like to be a matter of public record here before this council tonight. Thank you much for your
Yeah,
time.
no, thank you. Very
Thank you.
informative. All right. I'm going to chop this up. Barry Minelli? I'm terrible. I went to Rockledge High. How about that? Okay.
That's okay.
Barry,
Not a
I'm
problem.
interested.
Name is Barry Menegali. I live at 2119 McFarland in Cocoa and probably no more than a couple hundred yards from the park itself. And really, my intent in speaking tonight is just to make sure that, everybody understands that as a concerned resident, we would just like to know if in fact the park becomes our ownership, quote, as far as Carlton Terrace, how would it be managed? What the responsibility is? What are the financial concerns? And all of those things, I think, need to be addressed before all the people within the terrace, before we can come to an educated decision on what we really want to do. We definitely know there is a problem with the park. I think all the residents definitely agree. But again, my point is, how do we go about doing this, regardless of what the platting has been, regardless of whether the park has been in the city and the city has done the maintenance over the years. If it in fact is going to transition over to the residents, how is this going to be done? What kind of financial responsibilities would there be? Accountability, and things like that. I just want to make sure that that's understood and on record as something that I think is a concern of everybody within Carlton Terrace. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Barry. Anybody else like to speak on this?
Can I speak?
Yeah. You got a card? Good, good.
We've been.
Here you go. You got a card?
I haven't filled out yet.
Oh, yeah, just
pick
do
it
that.
out. I'll fill out.
Name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Barry Slack. I live at 300 Carlton. My parents bought in Carlton Terrace in 1963. I was in 5th grade. 2 years later, brother and I got a sailboat, a pram. We used to take it down to the river. And all of a sudden, there was a cable across the front. The city used to lock it at night. Well, went up to ask my dad. I said, hey, we got locked out. I can't get the boat home. So we chained it to a tree, and the next day, he called the city of Cocoa. And Cocoa said, well, that park now belongs to the city of Cocoa. And he said, well, I don't understand why. Because on my deed, I have legal description of that property on my deed. And in those days, all the old deeds in Cocoa had the park listed as the park and the legal description of it on the deed. And now I'm told that the new deeds don't have that on there because Cocoa told the Brevard County tax assessor that the park belonged to the city, and so their deeds don't have it on there. So I passed petition around, a bit gimpy here, but I got 17 petitions, and nobody I talked to refused to sign it. And most of them didn't even know the park belonged to us, to the lot owners. So that's part of where the neglect comes from. And that was in 1965 when my dad called to find out why the COCO was locking the park that was on his deed.
Wow.
So that's
Great to know.
the
Yeah.
background that comes from there now.
You might be the only person.
And I myself own 7 lots
Yeah.
because we all have double, those lots are really small.
Yeah.
So, and that's
Yeah.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? It's kind of fascinating, to be honest with you.
Well, I know when I moved here in '74, it was a city park, because
Yeah.
we used to hang out there when I was in high school.
Right, see?
You must well go before me, go ahead.
That was where we hung out in high school, unless we were at the beach. And it was a city
Okay.
park then.
Yes, sir, come on. We won't go too much longer, I just want to make this thorough. Anybody wants to say anything?
Hi, I'm John Callahan. I live at 2006 North Indian River Drive. First of all, I want to say thanks for the support we've gotten from Matthew and the city manager. My biggest concern, now that the park gate is closed, is the liability issue. Nobody has insurance on this park. Where does the responsibility go?
Right, correct.
And how
So-
quickly can we get that answer?
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
John? Okay. Anybody else? While we're rolling? Nope. John, you want to say something? Mr. City Attorney, anything you want to say? No?
Who has the liability right
The
now?
liability.
Do we have liability because we've been maintaining it?
Well, I mean, to the extent that the city's, interests were confirmed by a court, of course, then the city would have a duty to maintain the property just like any other park that is owned or leased by the city.
Or controlled, right.
And controlled by the city. Now, the city has been maintaining the park. There's, during this time period, one could argue that, the city has a duty just like, anyone else to maintain it reasonably and, free from, defects and hazards, et cetera, during the course of maintenance. Now, with that said, let's assume that the lot owners have always had an interest in this property since 1924, 1926, because of the dedication. That doesn't change. And how the lot owners would ensure the potential liability due to that interest that's been conveyed to them since 1924 is up to the lot owners. I don't know whether or not their homeowners insurance would cover potential liability regarding this park or not. That's really an issue for them. But from the city's perspective, as long as you're in the game trying to maintain this property, I would say just the general rules of torts and negligence will apply with respect to liability. But with that said, I mean, you have the city's interest in this property to the extent that there is a public easement for park purposes would have to be recognized by a court, not by city council fiat, given the current situation.
Why would we do that? I mean, it's obvious we
I'm not
don't own the park.
advocating one way or another.
I know. Okay, so I'll ask the council.
That's a legitimate question for the council.
It belongs to these people. I don't want to take them to court to take their park away from them. I mean, yes, it's been used by the public in the city of Cocoa and other people for all these years, and we paid to maintain it, but while we were maintaining it, we were getting a public purpose out of it, so I don't feel like they owe us anything, I just, they want the park, it's their park, fine, we just quit maintaining it and let them have it. I mean, and my only thing is if, as residents, if I was a property owner in Carlton Terrace, I'd be like wanting to get together with all my neighbors and decide how we were gonna deal with it. They've got, I mean, they probably as a group need to hire an attorney and see what their liabilities and stuff are, but if it's not ours, it's not ours, and yeah. I mean, I'm gonna hate not being able to go down there, because I really enjoy it, but and I know my next door neighbor does too. I mean, I've been going down there most of my life, but.
But Troy's right, it's, for me, I get those phone calls for years on the activity down there, so obviously, no matter how it's fixed up, and,
Yeah.
you know, this has got nothing to do with ownership. If it's theirs, let's
It's theirs.
have at it,
Yeah.
I say, but we have to do it formally or whatever, and the attorney's
Whatever we
gotta
need to
work
do,
it,
if
you
it's
know?
their property, it's their property. If we need to do
Yeah.
something to change it in the property appraisers,
I'm not gonna get in the way. You wanna say something, Don?
Yeah, all I want to say is that McFarland Park, a few years back when I was a V-Cop, I used to patrol that area day and night, and I always find trouble down there. Never found anything that was going on legally, or I'd have to call for backup, and, you know, people drinking beer and letting their dog run loose and not cleaning up after their dogs, and you tell them to do that, and they give you a four-letter word, so, which I'm a gentleman I won't mention, but
hey,
Okay.
But my own opinion, I don't see any use with that park. Until we can get it straightened out, I'd just say put the lock on the gate and leave it closed. Until we could find out exactly what's going on, and accept letting the city assume responsibility for something that's not useful as far as I'm concerned. I'd just say put the padlock on the gate and leave it there for now until we can decide what's going on.
well, until the
That's my
people
opinion.
who actually own it can come up with
A plan.
a plan that they want to, and then
Matt,
maybe Matt needs to
Matt wants
continue
to
to
talk.
sit down with them and keep
Yeah. I agree with that.
communication open, yeah.
Keep it locked until this can get resolved between the owners. Yeah.
Are there
Let them
any,
decide.
are there any assessments as far as taxes are concerned on the property?
not right now.
No,
No?
no.
Well, if the citizens that live there claim that it's theirs and the city doesn't have ownership of it, what do we have to do? Actually, nothing.
Matt wants to talk.
Just get it changed at the property appraiser at the county level.
Perhaps
directly.
that's what we need to do as far as legalities are concerned.
Matt wants to talk.
To protect this, to
And-
protect the city.
Anthony and I have discussed that very issue specifically related to the liability, and regardless of the outcome, if the city wishes to, as it's clearly stated, has no ownership interest, if the city wants to essentially turn that over to the lot owners, I think there needs to be a legal remedy to establish that, to get, the city of Cocoa
Yeah.
off of that record.
He already cracked on us and said that, basically,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so,
in legal talk.
Yeah.
we can't even insure the part, we have no ownership of it.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's true. So,
Can I make a
okay,
motion?
so,
Yeah.
if the city feels, if we feel, as the leaders, that it's their park and nothing else pops up,
Their part.
then, Mr. City Attorney, make plans to, transfer it over. You know what I'm saying?
What?
Or whatever,
Straighten it out,
All right?
or straighten it out.
or
Yeah.
make the
Make a motion.
clerk of the court straighten it out, or the property appraiser, whoever.
Well,
Somebody wants. Henry.
I mean, maybe
somebody wants to
won't-
speak. I think the extent that the council, as the governing body here,
They want to talk.
Yeah, okay. Come on up.
wants to clarify for the record that the city will no longer be maintaining this property, and that the city is not claiming an interest in this property, given the history of the city and the county maintaining this, it may be appropriate for the council to adopt a resolution.
Okay.
So it's clear in the record. In fact, you may even want to record it and then advise the property appraiser to fix the database accordingly. And that would be a clear indication by this governing body that the city of Cocoa no longer claims any interest in this property, which then, it falls upon the lot owners and the lot owners only to maintain this property.
Right.
And then the taxpayers in District 4 would no longer be paying taxes towards this park, correct? At that point, because they have been since the county let's see, what date was that? That was back in 1972.
No one is paying any ad valorem taxes on the property,
There's
but
just-
residents of Carlton Terrace, just
Using-
like every other property owner in
Yeah,
District
using
4, are
past
paying.
District 4 tax revenues, yeah,
The tax revenues.
Right.
From District 4 are being applied.
for the and maintenance and,
maintenance.
yeah, and operation, so that would sever that.
Correct.
Pete Oliveri, I live at 2515 McFarland.
You want to speak up, get closer?
Closer to the mic, please.
Can you hear me now? Pete Oliveri, I live at 2515 McFarland Drive, obviously Carlton Terrace. I haven't heard any discussion as to whether the city would be interested in having a shared relationship of maintaining the park with Carlton Terrace. Because I'm on the fence on this.
That could be worked out. I mean,
Yeah,
with-
I'm on the fence, and I just haven't heard any discussion. I just want to make sure we're not talking past each other.
That's why I asked if we could come up with a method for the property owners in Carlton Terrace to vote, or so that everybody had an opportunity to express their opinion. But I think as property owners, you guys need to get together and come up with a plan and decide how you want to move forward, whether you want to form a homeowners association, whether you want to vote. It sounds to me like you may have an attorney amongst you, and maybe you guys
Yeah,
could just have a neighborhood meeting
There's
and
been
get
discussions
together, yeah.
within the neighborhood, and obviously, there's probably a bunch, as Troy said, a bunch of differing opinions. I just want to know, are you interested in participating in something with
Sure,
us?
absolutely.
Okay, that's.
My mind is open,
But we were
whatever you
hearing from-
guys
we were
want. I mean,
hearing-
whatever works for you.
What we were
Right.
hearing wasn't indicated that.
That was my concern. I just
Yeah.
wanted you to know that that's on the table, because I
Yeah.
think we all have an interest to make sure it's maintained.
Mm.
And if we don't get the interest from the neighborhood, then it's a disaster.
Right. We want that to remain a nice place. We don't want it to be overgrown. Either
And
the
I
dock
think-
needs to come out so nobody gets injured on it, or it needs to be rebuilt, whatever you guys decide, it's yours. We're here to assist you, make it work for you. If you want to share it with other people in the city of Cocoa, if you want to put a gate on it and give people access, whatever you want to do, you bring us an
Yeah,
idea and we'll
and-
be happy to listen.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure we all knew that that was on the table, because I think we've got some discussions that need to go on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know some of my neighbors are going to be upset that they can't get in there.
Well, they should have key access, and those with a key can get in there.
Yeah.
Mr.
But right
Mayor.
now, I'd like to make a,
Mr. Mayor, Council.
can I make a motion?
Well, I was just going to suggest, if the residents of Carlton Terrace need a location for them to meet, we would certainly make available the Civic Center, whenever they organize to have a meeting. I got to imagine having one central location that can accommodate everybody.
This is just so odd. I don't know what to tell you. It's odd.
It's kind of
It's
like
just too
the
much
cemetery
time,
thing,
Gavin.
Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole cemetery thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just like the cemetery.
Yeah.
You know,
And
get buried.
I'd like to make a motion right now, if I may, that we keep the gate locked until we get this straightened out and find out the liability and et cetera. And then the homeowners can get back to us and find out what they want to do, and then we can take it from there. But I think right now we should lock the gate and leave it locked until further notice. That's my motion.
And continue to patrol it, please.
Yeah, well, if it's locked, the gate's
Or no,
locked, they can't
it
get in
doesn't-
there.
doesn't
if
stop
they're
a lot of
locked.
folks. Okay, okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. So, Mr. City Attorney, you have some direction, right, to go forward?
And Matt,
And
I
then,
think Matt,
then the homeowners, the city is going to provide a space, civic center or wherever you want to meet to further to resolve it.
I mean, I understand the motion, and, I think that's a great idea, but I would just caution you that this probably should not stay in limbo for a long period of time.
Yes.
I think
Thank you.
some finality needs to be brought
sooner the better.
to this matter, so it's clear on who's responsible for what.
Well,
And the only thing I was concerned is the liability on the city's part. That's why, until we can
Lock
get
the
this
gate.
straightened out, that's what,
keeping the gate locked, I think, is a good idea. What if, I would like to make a motion that we ask the city attorney to go ahead and move forward with a resolution, because I know it's going to take a few weeks to get that prepared.
Yeah.
Doing what he suggested, that we, publicly and formally give up our interest. Then if the homeowners in Carlton Terrace come forward and want to work out an agreement later, then we've got a clean table to work from. So why don't we, I'll make a motion, we go ahead and move forward with the resolution that the city attorney suggested.
Second.
Second over here, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So that'll clean it up a little bit. Good
Yeah.
job. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that,
Yep.
let's just erase the board and start over again. Okay.
I guess
All right.
much like the issue with the park, there may be an issue coordinating this meeting.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I don't know who the point person is for Carlton Terrace, but if you would just reach out to me and I can help facilitate a time and place,
Yep.
if you so desire.
There's already talk and discussions about forming a park association, and as Pete there a few minutes ago said, with potential some, synchronicity or togetherness, working together with the city to make this happen. But I think, again, what we have to do post haste is put together a park owners association in some format and to move forward with their own liability insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Once a set of bylaws are written, the association is formed, board of directors is appointed, and we should be able to move forward with those board of directors to define and to see if there is an interest perhaps on part of the city that we can work together with this. I think you'll find that will very well be the case. And those things are already, at least verbally, in motion to occur.
Okay. Yep, thank you. Yes, sir.
Sure, you can work with me.
All right, so let's go to number 3, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your patience.
It's an emotional issue.
Mr. Mayor, what you have before you is a resolution concerning Amendment 1 that is on the ballot for this upcoming election on November 6, 2018. Amendment 1 was put on the ballot by the legislature, and under the, to quote, probably, comprehensive tax reform, for Floridians. And as I know, the resolution establishes, some just general, I know in the county and in the state, but it's expected to cost about $644.7 million per year. And in terms of increasing the tax exemption for those properties above $125,000, they are the 100 to 125. And what that does, it's going to result in a tax shift to commercial property owners, non-homesteaded property owners, and those at, paying less than the that their property is less than 100,000, they won't experience any of that. So I know local governments, county government, both municipal and county are concerned about this. I know we've talked about it as a horizon issue in terms of the impact of potentially a loss of revenue about $160,000, which might result in a, millage increase to make up that shortfall.
Yeah, we've
and
already
that
made-
would go
we've already
to
made changes.
non-homesteaded. I'm just saying, this resolution is expressing council's put on here, and if we did work with League of Cities, is essentially to, establish, council's position on the terms of, or the resolution or your position. It really goes, Amendment 1 goes to, it will benefit a handful of homeowners, but it could expose local businesses, non-homesteaded properties to a higher tax burden. Florida Tax Watch, nonpartisan, independent tax watchdogs in the state for 3+ decades, they're adamantly opposed and are encouraging people to vote no on Amendment 1 because of the concerns of the tax shift, in terms rather than tax reform. So the league put out an email, and I thought it was appropriate, and that's why I put it on the agenda. And the requested action is to consider the approval of a resolution concerning Amendment 1 to the Florida Constitution.
I mean, we've kind of already made adjustments to how people pay taxes and to, in front of this, you know what I'm saying? Public service tax.
No, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, it's
We can still be opposed to it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
and encourage people not to vote for it,
Yeah.
because it's gonna hurt a whole lot more people than it's gonna help. I'll make a motion that we approve.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, I'll go with it. All right, utilities.
Katie.
Item 1, approve the construction costs and authorize the payment to Brevard County to relocate, replace water mains within the Cone Road drainage and sidewalk improvements and Cone Road infrastructure improvements projects, WS 17 CD, to approve the payment of the construction bid cost of $108,213, to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to approve and execute change orders in an amount not to exceed $10,821 or 10% contingency for a project total of $119,034, to approve a resolution amending the fiscal year 2019 budget through the use of water sewer contingency.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Ed?
Yes, Mayor and Council, we request that you authorize city manager to execute an interlocal cost share agreement known as Save Our Indian River Lagoon Project Cost Share Interlocal Agreement between Brevard County, Florida and City of Cocoa, agreement number S. Sorrel 1814, as modified by the city attorney. Approval resolution amending the 2019 budget, accepting stormwater reserves revenue. This is for a cost share project for our stormwater baffle box on Church Street. Save Our Indian River Lagoon has offered some money this past year. There's a little language issue that needs to be worked out with the scrutinized contractors list, and we'll be working with the county, and when those minor details are worked out, like authorization for the city manager to execute that. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
That's good, yeah.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Karen?
We request that you approve the development agreement between the City of Cocoa and 120 Barnacle Bay LLC to allow the developer to construct 18 townhomes on 3 parcels of land, tax parcels IDs as listed, totaling 1.03 acres, located on the north side of Rosa L. Jones between Florida Avenue and John Garin Lane. We have a brief presentation just really to orient you to the site and a few aspects of the development agreement. We won't take too long. We also have the applicant team here, the developer, in case there are any questions. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Apologize, I thought it was loaded up on here.
So I can give you a little background while Dodie's bringing up the presentation. As I mentioned, this is the north parcel on Rosa L. Jones between Florida Avenue and John Garin Lane. Many of you know it as the site of a former funeral home. And the applicant had various concept plans that they had been considering, and it wasn't until the site diagonal to it, which is the former Oaks Mobile Home Park, had been, there had been a RFP issued by the Cocoa CRA to redevelop that site. There was some discussion between the owner of the smaller site before us today and respondents to the RFP, and there was an agreement that the development that was proffered for the RFP response, a smaller portion of that could be mirrored on the subject property site before us tonight. And so this development agreement understands that the site is constrained in part because there's some FP&L transmission lines and just the sheer, the size of the parcel. And this would be a catalytic development for the southern area of the village, and it's right across the street from the heart of Cocoa. And so this is a nice transition. It's also different than what we've had in the downtown area. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dodie now so she can walk you through the project.
So we've already started. It's a development agreement officially between the City of Cocoa and 120 Barnacle Bay LLC. They're wishing to. I'm sorry. Sorry. They're wishing to construct 18 townhomes on these 3 parcels of land. And I apologize for the technology goof there. So we've established, okay, the parcels are on the north side of Rosa L. Jones, between John Garin and Florida. And this is this was a concept plan. It's for early days. It's changed a little bit. The landscaping at the north side, the top of the screen, has shrunk. The project has moved back a little bit further. But essentially, the basic layout hasn't changed. Want to include that because this is the site plan, and at this stage, it's very busy. It's conveying an awful lot of information. The project will have a driveway, one-way shared drive across the north side of the parcel from Florida across to John Garin. There'll be 18 units all total, 2 on the corner, the southwest corner. Will back to a shared short drive with the 2 that are actually facing the stormwater pond. And we have 4 units that have backing. Their driveways will be on John Garin. And this is an artist rendering of the project, and this is looking to the northeast. It's at the corner of Rosa Jones and Florida.
No. Funeral home.
Yeah, this is kitty corner across.
Traffic circle. Traffic circle, the funeral home.
Yeah. This rendering shows the rooftop decks, and actually the townhomes in the distance are that parcel you were just mentioning.
I like the top there. That's good.
This is another view of that. We had asked them to give us a rendering to describe it. We haven't had this kind of real architectural style really
cool.
in the village, and so
Urban living.
Yeah.
Hey, Dodie.
Exactly.
This is
Dodie,
awesome.
that's right here.
Yes, there we go.
Why the sunlight's still free and the air's free. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We've never seen nothing like this out there.
Yeah,
This will probably
Awesome.
Well, you see this
Do
in a
well.
lot of metropolitan areas. It's very common in larger cities like New York, Chicago.
I know
you
Charleston's got it.
Right,
That,
but
so.
this would be the first for our city, and I think it's a great concept. I love it.
Yeah.
I really do. Kudos on you guys doing that.
Yeah.
It was very smart. Yeah.
I won't go through all of the slides that we did for P&Z, but there is a concept plan included with the development agreement, the architectural covenants, enhancements, some variances and waivers that are requested by the developer, and a provision for 2 model homes, all incorporated in this development agreement. I'm going to skip over the background. We've already sort of covered that. Staff looked at concurrency, and that we'll be doing a more formal review when we get the preliminary subdivision application in. So for a development agreement, we look at 4 criteria: the need for the variances and waivers that are requested, the enhancements that are provided, consistency with the comprehensive plan, and public health and welfare. The variances and waivers come from 2 categories. They are those that apply to the Cocoa Waterfront Overlay District regulations, and then those that are driven from Chapter 18, which is subdivisions. And I won't go through them in depth. That's the list of the ones that are out of the zoning section, the overlay district, and then there are 3 more from subdivisions. This is just a short table to kind of describe for you that, for instance, lot depth requirement was 80 feet as a maximum, and the project will be providing 50 feet. So there's some trade-offs of those zoning related criteria, setbacks along Florida Avenue, Rosa Jones, some differences based on what's required. There were constraints on the property. There's two very large FPL, those big concrete poles that affect how the property could be laid out. Typically, our code actually requires that the buildings face the street and be located at the street frontage within 5 to 10 feet. And because of these poles, literally they'd be right outside the front door. So they're turning 4 of those units to face east and west as a result. Right. These are just some of the issues that, and John Guerin being originally developed, of course, as the railroad track. The parcels that built on the sides had the backs of their businesses, of course, were on John Guerin. And that means that those units that are going to be developed on this parcel along John Guerin, were they to face John Guerin, as the code requires, they'd be looking at the back doors of these commercial establishments across the street, and that's not what every homeowner really wants. So, in sensitivity of that, we've addressed that part of their variance. So they will be providing enhancements, among them 7 on-street parking spaces on Rosa L. Jones. They'll be done in a manner that matches the streetscaping that we've already got on Florida Avenue. They'll be adding a concrete sidewalk on John Guerin, which at the present time doesn't have one. They'll be adding additional street lighting on Rosa L. Jones. They're required to provide one, and they'll be adding a second one, and also that those will be mirroring what we have for street lighting on Florida. So we've asked them basically to wrap the site with the same kind of street treatment that we have elsewhere. And then there's lighted walkways, pavers at the garage entrances, and underground utilities, energy efficiency features. The projects, as we already touched on, it's offering a smaller footprint, a vertical design that we haven't had before. We took a look at the height. It is, this is going to be a maximum of 3 stories, building to 48 feet. The district allows for a height of 5 stories, or 62 feet. So they will be below that. And then the comprehensive plan, there's 2 policies and a goal that the project is in support of. We looked at next steps for the case of the sake of the developer. They'll be bringing in very shortly the preliminary subdivision and / site plan as one document that will be going to the Planning and Zoning Board shortly, presuming you vote in approval this evening. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval on September 24th at a special meeting. And the developer's here this evening if you have questions for them.
Would you like to speak? Anybody?
Not unless there's questions.
I have a question for Dodie.
Yes.
You're back after taking a vacation, but you worked for us before. Has any other projects of similar been brought to the city while you've worked here? So this is like a first, yeah?
This is
This is
a nice...
better than anything in the county.
It's very nice to have a variety of housing types and stock within, a community, and so this gives us something new.
Yeah.
Which is
This is exactly
Not only new to the downtown, but new to the entire city.
Yeah, I think it's going to set the tone, hopefully, for
This is
further
perfect for the
developments.
downtown.
Yeah, because this is really what, the younger millennials, really, well, that's this kind of dwelling they want. They want to be able to walk to the village. They want to be able to, walk to their stores. They don't necessarily want to get in a car and have to.
Well, and you know what, I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking it'd be nice not to have to get in a car and
Yeah,
go.
and seniors too, but a lot of millennials don't
seniors,
even
yeah.
own a car. So this is desirable
Doty, but
This is so
before the-
exciting.
Living
Before
for
the
that.
crash, the economy crash, everybody, including me, had extra lots. Everybody's holding, and we were getting ready to unleash things. But this is cooler than what, like townhouses. And
Yeah.
then the crash came, and everybody's kind of shedding their stuff, and I like this a lot better. And
It's-
I'm glad we're resuming the interior builds. And this is
Yes,
gonna start something
infill
that,
is great, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this
And-
is so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you came back
Can't
at the
take
perfect
credit,
time.
but
Yeah, your timing was really good, Doty.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John, you want to say
I
something?
just want to thank the developers and their team
Yes.
for their patience as we worked through the nuances of making this happen, because it was kind of breaking ice on this one, so we certainly appreciate your understanding and patience.
And this with the project across the street, Catty Corner, it's gonna, that whole, I gotta tell you, you know who's more excited about this project than anybody? Rudy at El Charros. He's so excited, he can't
Yeah,
stand
this is
it.
gonna
Yeah.
put-
El
It's going to put
Charros.
80 units in that area.
Yeah.
Within walking distance.
Oh, yeah, he's so excited, yeah.
Okay, I make a motion to accept it as read.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good.
Thank you guys so
Yeah.
I
much.
do have a question. When is your groundbreaking or your ribbon cutting?
The groundbreaking's next week.
Next week.
We're probably going to delay the
Or
ribbon
ribbon.
cutting from next week to just a couple of weeks.
Okay.
But we're waiting on the permits, and we hope to have them in a month or two, and we look forward to working with staff. They've been very helpful and very cooperative.
That's great.
Yeah,
Great
thank
to
you.
hear. Thank you for doing it.
But yes, it was true.
Woo-hoo.
That'd be nice.
Captain's back. Okay.
So exciting.
Very exciting. All right.
Chief.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Asking approval of usage of forfeiture funds in the amount of $5,000 to be used for the gun buyback program to purchase gift cards, and to approve a resolution amending the FY19 budget. Its expenditures deemed consistent with the provisions under Florida State Statute 932-7055, subsection 5A.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good job. Thanks, Chief. All right. Finance, here we go.
This item requests council approval for the mayor to sign the subaward and grant agreement with the Florida Division of Emergency Management, which is contract number Z0406, and to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager or the finance director to sign all future amendments to this contract. If council will recall, at the last meeting, I mentioned that this contract would be coming forward. This represents the first obligation by the state for Hurricane Irma, and all subsequent obligations will cause an amendment to this contract, which we're requesting the mayor to sign. And so we're requesting that the future amendments to the contract, the resolution would authorize the city manager or the finance director to approve those subsequent amendments until all the money is fully obligated, and then we would bring the item back to council again to report the full amount of money obligated for Hurricane Irma. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. That's good. All right. Katie?
All right. Item number 6, pursuant to the Taylor Creek Reservoir, St. Johns River water supply agreements with Orange County, Toho Water Authority, Orlando Utilities Commission, and East Central Florida Services, approve the final ranking of the shortlisted firms for RFQ 18-18-COC, technical consulting permitting services for the TCR SJR water supply project, to authorize the city manager and city attorney to negotiate and execute a multi-year contract with the top-ranked firm, HCR Inc.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Representatives from HDR in the audience.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
One you may know.
Thanks for coming. A long meeting, wasn't it? Okay, anybody in the audience from advisory board or committee that'd like to speak? You don't want to say anything, Cap? Okay. City administration, we're gonna start with Ed again. How you doing?
No report.
No report.
I just want to remind everybody, you heard Mr. Rip Dial earlier today talk about the K-9 competition coming up, Space Gun K-9 competition at Cocoa High. It'll be at the stadium from 1 to 5 or 1 to 7 on Saturday. I encourage everybody to come out. Been a lot of people who worked really, really hard from the community. Councilwoman Warner put a lot of time into this also. You know, police department and Brevard Kennel Club. So come out. I think everybody will have a great time. Thank you.
Is the sheriff's dogs coming?
Yes.
Brevard? I heard
Yeah.
all they do is they sleep all the time. Is that true?
I don't know on that one.
Okay. Brenda?
I can tell you, Mr. Mayor, if you've never seen a bloodhound run an obstacle course, you definitely don't want to miss this. I think the sheriff is sending Junie out thinking that he might have a possibility of winning. I also understand, and I would like to extend our condolences to the sheriff in the fact that we got ahead of him on this. I hear he's a little upset that this is our event and not his.
He was sleeping at the wheel.
I love you, Wayne, but you know what? You don't get everything in town. This belongs to us.
Yeah, he's not gonna like that. Okay.
No, but he can bring Junie out, and he can have a good time, and he can come out and bring his new disaster relief trailer that the Brevard Kennel Club also assisted him in getting.
That's good.
We gave him that one, so he can bring it out, let the public see the disaster relief trailer, especially right now while everybody's thinking about hurricanes. So
Yeah.
it's a big asset to his animal services department that the Brevard Kennel Club, who's also our major sponsor, managed to get for the sheriff to the cost of about $10,000.
It's good.
With some American Kennel Club donations and stuff. So it's going to be a huge asset for our community, and we've got some great community partners in this city, and now you don't need to call on me for reports. I'm done.
Really?
Well,
Don wants, no.
I wanted to give Wayne a
We're coming
hard
back to
time
you.
a little bit,
No,
you know,
we're-
but yeah, I think I think we have 4 of Wayne's bloodhounds entered in the
Wow,
competition.
that's awesome.
So, yeah, it should be a lot of fun, and I would like to see the council, not only the council, but the city staff support it, because we do have a whole lot of community members and kids in this community that have worked hard to make it a success. So, that's my report, too, so.
Okay. Wow, Brenda. Chief Prince?
No report, Mayor.
Okay. Karen?
Just a brief reminder that on October 22nd, Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization will be hosting a walking tour, I guess, showcase of Florida Avenue, starting in Rockledge and making their way here to show how a complete street should be designed, so do's and don'ts, and then I guess maybe stopping at timeout afterwards. So I think it's about 5:30 in the evening, and if you're around, you might want to join.
Yeah, what day is it?
The 22nd, it's a Monday.
Okay, thank you. Eddie?
No report. The only thing I wanted to share was this coming Monday on October 15th begins the toy drive sign up for the City of Coco's toy drive. Sign-ups will be beginning at the city clerk's office from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. starting Monday, October 15th through Friday, November 16th. We'll be also accepting donations of toys at here in City Hall, at the police department, and all 3 fire stations, and at the utilities building. So.
Okay, thanks.
No report.
No, Monica? Okay. It's funny, I saw Jack leaving in his truck earlier, and he had that look on his face like he wasn't coming in, and he didn't, so, interesting. That's good. The super attorney, Tom Brady of the attorney world. You're up. And how's
Are you calling him old?
Tell him you took care of his golf.
All's well in New England at the moment.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
I just returned yesterday. They're all happy, yes. Right, John? It was a nice trip to New York.
Just to let you know, the Yankees didn't do so well the other night, so, okay. I primed the pump. It
We have a little rivalry
time.
going on up here.
Yeah,
27 to,
yeah. A lot of runs, yeah. Anything?
No, I have no report.
Okay. Thanks for schooling us tonight. I appreciate it. I didn't mean anything about the attorney stuff. I was just kind of.
Yeah, right.
No worries.
Yeah, we're good. Everything's good. Okay.
Everything's good.
Yeah. Mr. Assistant City Manager Matt?
No report.
What?
I gave it earlier.
Hey, yes. Did I saw a barge come in, I thought, to one of the boats and it left again. Is that, or they offloading something? Or?
You know, I'm not sure. There are, east of the power lines, I noticed there's a couple more over there
Yeah.
that have appeared, and I hope they're moving along soon.
Well, I meant there was a barge that came in, and I thought they were going to pull the boats, and they never did. So.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. No.
I'm not aware of any maintenance or work that's being done out there, so.
Okay.
The county, I don't think they've received funds for any removals lately, so.
Yep. John, like this, I have a Twitter partner at Oleander Point. It's on the north building, and anything that's happening in the basin, she takes pictures of it and makes sure they see it pretty like spot on. So it's good. John, you got anything, Mr. City Manager?
First, just want to, City Council, as you're aware that you directed us back in August on the first reading of the zoning amendment requested by the Cocoa CRA regarding stories and heights in Cocoa Village, and specifically the character scale, among other considerations, to have a public workshop. That public workshop occurred this past Wednesday. It was well attended, and it was facilitated by GAI Consultants and Community Solutions Group, Pete Seckler. And we have received the report, and we mentioned I did discuss at the outset of the workshop that while it might be difficult and we were uncertain if we would be able to make it to the next, we knew obviously not tonight, but to the 24th City Council meeting for the second hearing, we have received the report. We've worked with the City Attorney's Office, and we have placed legal advertisement and are planning to bring schedule the second hearing on that zoning amendment for October 24th. I want to announce that now, and then also let council know for everybody that signed in and provided their email address, we will email them so they are informed of the meeting. And so I just want to make that announcement rather than just so people are aware. Because at the time, we weren't certain we would get the consultant's report in and have sufficient time to analyze, take into consideration, and then see if there was a way to, subject to what the outcome of the workshop was. So the other thing, just more in pink, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October, increase the awareness of the disease.
You gonna top yourself?
What's that?
You gonna top what you did last time?
That was for something else, sir.
Okay.
And then just from one local government to many, our thoughts and prayers are with those cities and communities and residents and businesses being impacted by Hurricane Michael in the Panhandle.
Yes, absolutely.
It's up in Georgia right now,
Yeah.
so it moved through in a hurry.
Unbelievable, that thing. That's it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Whipple?
Yes. Just one thing I want to comment about. You may have seen in the news in Virginia Park, there was a lady that was assaulted in her home, and the individual, so I'm told, has been incarcerated. They did catch him. So those out there in TV land listening in the Virginia Park area, that suspect has been apprehended. He's actually in the county jail now. I just wanted to mention that it was on TV. They had a photograph of my neighbor who has a doorbell camera, So that speaks volume for what we really need to do in order to protect our homes. And I appreciate you, Chief, doing close patrol in that area after these event has taken place. We really do appreciate that. I've had several visitors to my home with their concerns about the safety and the people walking through the neighborhood, backpacks, et cetera. And I thank you for paying attention to what's going on in that area.
You're very welcome. We're committed to, to making Cocoa the safest city in Brevard County, truly.
All right, thank you
Sure.
very
And
much.
the cameras, that was very instrumental in us being able to solve that as fast as we were able to. And then kudos to our detective team.
Yes, very
Yeah,
good.
she said she had the Ring doorbell, which is
Yes.
actually fairly affordable, so,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They've come way down on
Yeah.
price, yeah.
yeah.
What is that?
It's the Ring doorbell.
Yes, it takes a photograph.
Yeah, it's a camera, and you can
Camera.
actually look at it on your phone, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. It's called Ring. Actually, the guy who developed it took it to the Shark Tank show and couldn't get an investor, and now he's actually a member of the Shark Tank. He's making billions off of it, so,
Wow,
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, it was a great store, but it's very affordable. I think it's like in the $100 price range, which is,
It's affordable.
yeah, and lots of people are finding that it's very successful in catching people trying to break into your home.
Well, helpful for the police anyway, so they
Yeah,
can see. the
very
visual
helpful. I
Cops
mean,
can't be everywhere.
yeah,
Photograph or video or, yeah.
yeah, having that guy on, I mean,
Yeah.
because anybody who knew him could tell who he was from
Yes.
those pictures that were posted
Yeah,
on
they were
on
very
TV, yeah.
Very clear
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah.
Very clear.
I had a newscaster come to my house this evening looking for the lady with the camera. She just happened to be my wife's classmate that lives about 4 houses from me. Yes.
Very good.
Great. Glad he got caught.
Another tool, that's good.
Yes.
Okay, Brenda?
I've done my report. I just wanted to talk about the canine thing and make sure you guys come out and have a good time, and hopefully the sheriff will come out and we can give him a hard time some more.
Okay.
You need to be there, Mayor, just in case the sheriff
No,
shows up.
I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna take pictures of the sleeping dogs.
Yeah, oh, great, great.
Be there.
Yeah, just,
Don?
No report.
What? No report?
nothing happened at Flying J?
You said everything, Brenda.
How about the pool?
What?
The pool?
Oh, the pool is nice and warm. Look at it. Nice.
You do have a tan, that's good. All right. Jerry, you're up.
2 items. Next Tuesday, the
Too much
16th. Yeah, next Tuesday, the 16th, I will be hosting my District 4 Town Hall meeting, and that will be at Fire Station 1. So for those of you in the audience and listening who don't know where that's located, it is just directly behind the intersection of Dixon and Clear Lake. Very visible from that intersection. You shouldn't, I don't see how you could really miss it. It's a large facility and well lit up, so I hope we have a good turnout. I'd like to see a lot of attendance. This is the last town hall meeting of the year. So for all of those you listening, I hope you can attend. And thank you for the chief for allowing us to host the town hall meeting at his station. I appreciate that. Thank you. And one other item I just want to mention, because no one else has mentioned it yet, Thursday on the 18th from 5:30 to 7 p.m., Cocoa High School will be rededicating the stadium, the football stadium, to Richard Dick Blake Stadium in honor of the service and contribution that Mr. Blake gave to the school and to the community as well. So just wanted to put that out there for
I
information.
will be there. I'm actually on the agenda.
Are you?
Mhm.
Okay, very good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
As the only member of the council who graduated from Cocoa High, I get the honor of doing the speaking.
Well, then you should. You should. And I just want to thank the staff on the report that we got from the CRA. I know that they put a lot of work into that presentation, and thank you very much for all the hard work and hours that went into it. So, very, very good information, and thanks for the presentation, John. So, that's it,
That's
Mr.
it?
Mayor. Yeah.
very good. What day is the dedication?
The 18th.
The 18th.
18th, okay.
Yeah.
It's on the calendar. All right, just in closing, really, I went to Senator Dorothy Huckel's service, memorial service, the other day, and it was a very up event. Miss Huckel was a friend. I really appreciated getting to know her the last 4 years. She was a champion of home rule. She came from local government, and so we didn't have the disconnection that we've experienced with other elected officials from Tallahassee. Probably my biggest beef, and Brenda's, right? I know John, everybody here has enjoyed dealing with her, and losing her to cancer it's a big blow for the state of Florida. She loved having her office in the Porsche House in the southern end of her district. She had a huge following of people that loved her. For me, just a quick story is, for a time there, she would call me. I would do a morning picture. We always had a little bantering back and forth that I'd say, and I thought, honestly, she would man the social media on Twitter, John, and Facebook, and I thought, gosh, you got a big staff. And as her son reminded me the other day, she did it all herself, and she was very tech-minded, and did a great job for the district, and I really appreciate her. I don't know who we're going to get to replace her, but those are great shoes to fill. I met a lot of people from Port Orange. A lot of people have known her for a long time, and she's a solid person. It was a huge loss for Cocoa and for the state of Florida. I just can't put it any other than that. And great lady. Any comments before we close down? That's all I had.
No, sir.
No.
Oh, I just want to say that we would talk on Friday or Saturday morning. Sunday morning, she'd call me early, and she'd laugh about about social media and stuff. But she was very, very experienced in her wisdom, wit, was second to none. Very experienced. Didn't worry about a lot of things.
You know what the best part about Senator Huckel was? She wasn't fixed in her ideas. She listened to what everybody had to say, and she didn't care what political party you belonged to.
No. Yeah,
if there was something to be accomplished, that was the last thing she worried about, was political party.
Right.
And she was...
I know she
was always willing to listen. She didn't care, if you didn't think like she did, she would listen to you. I think that comes from being in local government, and
It does.
it's a huge loss to all of us who she served, definitely. And I know that, for the people that, or the person who was running against her, that's definitely not, the way she wanted to see November come out. So
No.
I don't know, has there been any word on who might be?
I haven't heard a word about it. Maybe John has. John, have you?
No. So we don't know who the candidate is going to be?
The only that's running is Melissa Martin on the Democratic side.
Yeah.
Well, I know the Republican Party is supposed to appoint somebody and
It's supposed to be a write-in or a designated person.
designate somebody. I just, if they're listening, I would hope that they would think real hard about finding someone who had the same heart as Senator Huckel for local government. So.
Yeah. She is I remember she came to about 3 or 4 years ago. They kept calling about an office, and they wanted to be here in City Hall because it was a new building. They could get in and out quick. And then she went to she didn't like it. Went to the Porsche House. She goes, "Oh, this is my home. This is it."
Yeah, and I've worked a couple of times with her assistant Angelique, and I know her staff is also devastated by what's going on. So yes, we're gonna miss her.
Nope, we're gonna miss her. Okay. All right. Anything else? Anybody want to say anything? We're gonna close her up.
Your turn, Don.
Done.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.